Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice Podcast topic name is How to Train Your Ear for English Sounds. So if you're here listening to this, chances are your reading and writing in English are pretty strong, maybe even excellent. But have you hit that wall? You know the feeling. You put on an English movie, or maybe you're in an important meeting, and suddenly it feels like everyone's speaking a different language. It's all just a rush of sound.
Mumbled words, blended sounds, maybe an accent you're not used to. It's like the English you learned on paper just evaporates.
Exactly. You know the vocabulary, you know the grammar, but somehow the sounds themselves become this invisible barrier. It's frustrating.
Incredibly frustrating. And it really boils down to a core feature, or maybe a challenge, of English. It's got this huge sound system, those 44 distinct sounds, phonemes we call them. But here's the catch. Only 26 letters to represent them. So if your brain hasn't consciously mapped out those 44 sounds, real-life conversation, especially at speed, well, it becomes a guessing game. You're relying on context, not just hearing.
That is the exact pain point we want to tackle today. And the really good news is this deep dive is designed to give you a structured way through it. We want to help you turn that auditory confusion into real confidence.
That's the mission, absolutely. Because ear training isn't just about listening more. It's about actively, deliberately fine-tuning your auditory skills. It's not passive. It's about recognizing sounds instantly and then, crucially, being able to reproduce them accurately yourself. This is vital stuff for real conversations, professional settings, understanding different cultures through language.
Right. So let's lay out the roadmap for everyone listening. We're going from the why to the how.
Okay, we'll start with the basics, really breaking down English sounds and hammering home why this specific training is, well, necessary. Then we'll dig into the science a bit, how your brain actually adapts. Neuroplasticity is fascinating. And the main part, that'll be the training program itself. Practical tips, some clever tricks, lots of hands-on examples for those sounds that always trip people up. We'll definitely cover connected speech, building things up step by step.
Sounds like a plan. Let's jump into section 1, the foundation. Okay, let's unpack this complexity. We keep mentioning 44 sounds or phones. Compare that to just 26 letters in the alphabet. That mismatch right there. That's a big reason why English spelling feels so, well, chaotic sometimes.
It really is. It's just the numbers game of English. And those 44 sounds break down into 24 consonants and, get this, 20 different vowel sounds.
20 vowels.
20. Think about that. Many languages operate with 5, maybe 6 vowel sounds. This huge variety in English vowels is often where a lot of the initial confusion comes from, especially if your native language has fewer vowels. Your ear just isn't tuned to those subtle differences yet.
And that's before we even get to the tricky consonants. The ones that immediately spring to my mind are the sounds. There's the soft one, voiceless, like in think, that's a. And then the buzzy one, the voiced one, like in this A. 2 sounds, 1 spelling. Then you've got the English R sound, which sounds different depending on who's speaking, and those short vowels like the A in cat, that A sound.
And this leads us straight into the concept of the L1 barrier. That's the interference from your first language. The problem isn't just that English has lots of sounds, it's that many of these 44 sounds might simply not exist in your native tongue. When a sound isn't in your L1 inventory, your brain has this automatic habit. It substitutes the closest sound it does know. And this happens without you even realizing it. You literally might not hear the difference at first.
Can you give some specific examples of that, like common substitutions we see?
Oh, definitely. We see really clear patterns. For instance, speakers of Spanish or French often find the J sound that in a word like judge quite difficult because their languages might not combine a stop and friction sound in quite that way. And a really common one, globally recognized, is the trouble Japanese learners and sometimes Korean learners have distinguishing L and R. That L versus SU difference. Their brains might initially just lump them together because their L1 doesn't make that distinction phonemically vital. The brain filters everything through its native language settings.
So if our brains are automatically filtering things out or substituting sounds, how do we define ear training in a way that actually breaks through that barrier? It can't just be about listening passively.
No, absolutely not. Ear training, the way we mean it here, is about active listening. It's about consciously learning to distinguish sounds, and then, this is key, being able to accurately reproduce them. Think of it almost like training for music. A musician learns to hear tiny differences in pitch, in rhythm, in tone quality. We're doing the same thing, but for the sounds of English, the phonemes, the stress patterns, the intonation, the whole rhythm of the language.
And why is that level of sensitivity so critical? What happens in the real world if someone tries to get by without this focused training? What's the actual impact?
Well, the impact can be pretty significant. It often leads to misunderstandings, which can range from slightly embarrassing to genuinely problematic. The classic example everyone uses is confusing ship and sheep.
Right. There versus T.
Exactly. It's just one tiny vowel sound difference, but the meaning is completely different. Imagine mixing those up when asking for directions or in a business context. It causes confusion, frustration.
A total communication breakdown from one little sound.
Precisely.
Okay.
But on the flip side, the positive outcomes of training are huge. When your ear is tuned in, you start catching subtle differences in accents. You can tell a Londoner from someone from Liverpool, maybe. And critically, you start to automatically decode connected speech. You hear gonna, and your brain doesn't stumble. It instantly recognizes it as the natural fast speech form of going to. That's the key to keeping up with native speakers.
That makes total sense. It's moving beyond just knowing words to actually processing the sound stream at speed. So let's really spell out the core benefits for someone listening. What's the so what? Why dedicate time to this?
Okay, benefit number 1, dramatically improved listening comprehension. This is often the skill that lags behind reading and writing the most. If you struggle to follow spoken English, especially when it's fast or there's background noise, it can feel isolating. Ear training bridges that gap.
And better listening must feed directly into speaking more fluently too, right? Not just understanding.
It absolutely does. This phonological awareness, being aware of the sound, is fundamental for fluency. When you can hear a sound correctly, producing it correctly becomes so much easier. It creates a positive feedback loop. Better listening input leads to better speaking output.
Okay, so let's summarize those specific gains.
Right. First, better pronunciation. Hearing correctly helps you replicate correctly, which can reduce a strong L1 accent that might sometimes make communication difficult. Second, a massive boost in confidence. Truly understanding a fast conversation or a movie without straining, that feels fantastic. And third, better cultural integration. English varies so much, US, UK, Australia, India, everywhere. Good ear training helps you navigate all those accents and dialects much more smoothly.
I remember you mentioned the example of tricky vowel pairs, like distinguishing Mary, Mary, and Mary. In some parts of the US, those can sound incredibly similar.
A perfect example. For some speakers, they almost merge. But well-trained ears can pick up the subtle shifts in tongue position that differentiate them. Mastering those tiny phonetic details makes a huge difference to overall understanding. It moves you from just hearing to actively, deeply understanding.
Okay, we've established the sound system is complex and our native language creates barriers. But how does our brain actually learn these new sounds, especially as adults? Let's get into the science of it. We're talking about neuroplasticity, right?
Exactly. Neuroplasticity is the key concept here. It's the brain's amazing lifelong ability to reorganize itself, to form new connections and strengthen existing ones based on experience. When you consistently expose yourself to English sounds in a focused way, through the kinds of exercises we'll discuss your auditory cortex, the sound processing part of your brain literally gets rewired. It strengthens the pathways for recognizing and processing those specific English phonemes.
Wow, so we're not just learning facts, we're physically changing our brain structure to better handle a new sound system.
That's precisely what's happening. And research actually shows that even relatively short periods of targeted training, we're talking hours, not necessarily months, of focused practice, not just passive listening, can lead to measurable improvements in how accurately you perceive sounds. You're essentially upgrading your brain's operating system for English audio.
But there's a catch for adult learners, isn't there? Our brains are already experts in our first language.
That's the big hurdle, often called perceptual narrowing. Think of it like this. When you're an infant, your brain is open to all possible language sounds, like a radio tuner that can pick up every station. But as you grow and specialize in your native language, L1, your brain starts to tune out sounds that aren't important in that language. It becomes highly efficient at processing L1 sounds, but less sensitive to sounds outside that familiar range. So as an adult, your brain might actively filter out new English sounds, thinking, nope, that's not a sound I need to pay attention to.
Which explains perfectly why just listening more passively often isn't enough. You really have to consciously push your brain to notice these new filtered out sounds.
Precisely. You need focused effort. Random exposure might not be intense enough to break through that L1 filter. This is why methods like minimal pairs are so powerful. They force the brain to confront the difference.
Okay, so to make this training scientific and effective, you mentioned 3 pillars. What are those core skills we're building?
Right, the 3 pillars. First is phonemic awareness. This is the foundational ability to simply recognize individual sounds as distinct units, like knowing that cat has 3 sounds, K-A-T. We build this specifically by working with minimal pairs, words that differ by only 1 sound, like fan versus van, or pin versus pen. It forces your auditory system to register that small acoustic difference matters for meaning.
Okay, so recognizing sounds exist. What's pillar 2?
Pillar 2 is auditory discrimination. This is a step up. It's the skill of telling apart sounds that are very similar, sounds that often get confused by learners. Think distinguishing the short E in ship from the long E in sheep, or maybe the subtle difference between the is in sip and the is in zip. Minimal pair drills are still crucial here, but the focus sharpens on identifying the specific acoustic feature that makes them different.
And the third pillar deals with the music of the language.
Yes, prosody. This is incredibly important for sounding natural and for understanding native speakers. Proseody covers the rhythm, the stress patterns, and the intonation, the melody of English. English is a stress-timed language. This means the time between stressed syllables tends to be roughly equal, and unstressed syllables often get squeezed or reduced. This is very different from syllable-timed languages like Spanish or French, where each syllable gets roughly equal time. Understanding English stress and intonation is vital for comprehension and for not sounding, well, robotic or potentially conveying the wrong meaning.
So putting all this training together, the awareness, the discrimination, the prosody, the ultimate goal inside the brain is to create automatic sound maps.
So that's a great way to put it. Consistent, focused practice builds these automatic sound maps. Once a sound is properly mapped, you don't have to think about it consciously anymore. You just hear it, recognize it instantly, and process it. It becomes automatic. And this connects to other skills too. It's often noted that musicians tend to be good language learners. Why? Because they already have highly developed auditory discrimination skills for pitch and rhythm. Their existing sound maps for music give them a head start in building new ones for language.
Okay, the science makes sense. We know why this works. Now, let's get really practical. This is the core training program. And the first thing we need from you, the listener, is commitment. But not necessarily huge chunks of time, right?
Not at all. Consistency beats intensity here. We strongly recommend aiming for short, focused bursts, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of dedicated practice every single day. That's much more effective than one long, tiring session once a week.
Right, build the habit. Okay, tip 1, isolate phonemes and use minimal pairs. This sounds like the absolute bedrock. You need to identify those specific sounds that are tricky for you based on your native language. Maybe it's the oo or the tu or certain vowels, and then drill them relentlessly using minimal pairs. Why is this isolation step so crucial?
Because it directly attacks that perceptual narrowing we talked about. By forcing your brain to distinguish between 2 very similar sounds that change the meaning of a word like lice versus rice or think versus sink, you're telling your auditory system, hey, this small difference matters. The key substeps here are, first, figure out your specific problem sounds. Resources online often list common challenges based on L1 background. Second, use tools apps, websites that are designed for minimal pair drills. Don't just pick random words. Third, and this is powerful, record yourself saying the minimal pairs. Then listen back and compare it directly to a native speaker's recording. That self-correction is invaluable.
Okay, drills are foundational. Tip 2, immerse in authentic English audio, but strategically. So, moving beyond drills, we need real-world input. Podcasts, movies, songs. This builds your tolerance for natural speed, accents, background noise.
Yes, but the key word is strategically. If native speed feels like drinking from a fire hose, slow it down. Most players let you listen at 0.75x speed, maybe even 0.5x. This gives your brain processing time to catch the individual sounds before they blur together in connected speech. Also, try transcribing short clips like 30 seconds of a conversation or a news report. It's tough, but it forces you to notice every sound you missed, every word that blended together, and vary your sources. Listen to American English, British English, Australian English, get used to the different ways vowels are pronounced, and maybe use subtitles at the very beginning, but aim to turn them off quickly. Relying on reading bypasses the ear training.
Right, don't let your eyes do the work your ears need to do. Okay, tip 3. Practice shadowing for reproduction. This is a really active technique. Shadowing means mimicking a speaker almost in real time, right? Not just listening and repeating after. How do we do this effectively?
Exactly. You're speaking along with the speaker, maybe just slightly behind them. It's fantastic because it trains your ear and your mouth muscles simultaneously. It connects perception directly to production. To do it well, Choose clear, short audio clips, maybe a bit from a TED Talk or a clear newsreader. Focus entirely on copying the sound, the pitch, the rhythm, the intonation. Don't worry so much about understanding every word initially. Try to capture the speaker's musicality. Pause and repeat sections that are difficult. Treat tricky phrases like mini tongue twisters. And a great sub-tip: dedicate each short shadowing session to focusing on just one specific sound you're working on. Like, today is all about nailing the A vowel.
That focused approach makes sense for a short session.
Yeah.
Tip 4. Use tongue twisters and drills for muscle memory. This seems aimed squarely at the physical side of speaking.
It is. Pronunciation is physical. Tongue twisters force your tongue, lips, and jaw into positions that might feel unnatural if those sounds aren't in your L1. She sells seashells by the seashore is classic for distinguishing S and S. The key is to start slowly, painfully slow even. Focus deliberately on getting the mouth position correct. Use a mirror. We'll come back to that. If you struggle with a specific sound, like the voiced EA, make up your own little phrases. Those brothers bathe there. Start slow, focus on clarity, and only then gradually increase the speed. Accuracy first, speed later.
Good advice. Tip 5. Incorporate active listening techniques. We need to engage our brains more deeply than just letting the sound wash over us.
Absolutely. Passive listening has its place, but active listening is where the real learning happens. One great technique is prediction. Pause the audio mid-sentence. Try to predict the next word or phrase based on context and grammar. This forces your brain to anticipate patterns. Another one, keep a sound journal. At the end of the day, jot down specific sounds or maybe examples of connected speech that you noticed or struggled with. Actively noting things down helps solidify them in your memory.
Tip 6. Leverage music and songs. Okay, this sounds more fun. How can singing along help train the ear?
Music is fantastic for ear training, especially for prosody, rhythm, and intonation. When you sing along to English songs, you're naturally practicing the stress patterns and melody of the language. Plus, melodies are great memory aids. They help lock sound patterns in your brain. Use lyrics websites so you know the words. Start with slower songs, maybe ballads, where the singers tend to enunciate clearly. Focus on hitting those vowel sounds cleanly. Karaoke apps can also be useful structured practice. It's like guided shadowing, but with a tune.
Nice. Tip 7. Record and self-assess your speech. This one can feel a bit awkward listening to your own voice, but you're saying it's crucial.
It really is.
Yeah.
We often don't hear our own mistakes accurately. Recording yourself, maybe reading a short passage or doing some minimal pairs, and then listening back critically provides objective feedback. You hear the gap between what you think you sound like and what you actually sound like. There are apps now like ELSA Speak or Pronunciation Power that can give you specific phonetic feedback. Try recording the same short text once a week. Track your progress on specific sounds. Hearing the improvement over time is also really motivating.
Okay, objective feedback from tech. Tip 8. Join language exchanges for real feedback. This brings in the human element.
It's exactly. Technology is great for pinpoint accuracy, but real conversation tests everything in context, at speed, with unpredictability. Find language partners, maybe through apps like HelloTalk or Tandem, but be specific. Don't just chat. Ask your partner, could you please listen carefully to my pronunciation of the sounds and give me feedback? Or, did you understand me clearly when I said X? Recording these sessions, with permission of course, lets you review later and catch things you missed in the moment.
Good point about being specific with feedback requests. Tip 9. Use visual aids for sound positions, making the connection between the sound and how the mouth makes it.
Yes, because pronunciation is physical. Some sounds are hard simply because you don't know where your tongue is supposed to go. Look at phonetic charts online. Watch videos that demonstrate mouth positions, especially for sounds not in your L1, like E or 2, and use that mirror. Practice difficult sounds while watching your mouth. See the difference between the lip rounding for NS, like pool, versus the spread lips for like peel. That visual input really reinforces the auditory learning.
Okay, and the last few tips focus on keeping it going and broadening the scope. Tip 10. Set daily goals and track progress. Back to consistency.
Consistency builds the habit, which drives the neuroplastic change. Even if your goal is just 10 minutes of minimal pairs today, track it. Use a calendar, an app, anything. Seeing your progress visually keeps you motivated.
Tip 11. Explore accent variations. Don't just stick to one type of English.
Absolutely critical for advanced listening. The real world is full of diverse accents. Make a conscious effort to listen to speakers from the US, the UK, Australia, Ireland, India. Get your ear used to different vowel sounds, different rhythms. Seek out podcasts or news sources known for particular accents.
And finally, tip 12. Combine with speaking practice. Don't just listen. Produce.
Right. Your listening practice should feed your speaking practice, and vice versa. After you've drilled some minimal pairs, try using those words in sentences. Read dialogues aloud, focusing on the sounds you've been working on. Output reinforces input and makes the learning stick.
Okay, that was the comprehensive program. Solid advice. Now let's move into some clever tricks. Quick hacks to make practice maybe more fun, more focused, hyper-effective.
Yeah, these are ways to kind of turbocharge the process or just make it feel less like a chore sometimes.
Trick 1. Minimal pair games. Instead of just drilling, turn it into a rapid-fire game. Use flashcards or apps where you have to quickly decide, did I hear ship or sheep, lock or rock? That speed forces automatic recognition.
Trick 2. Slow motion listening for connected speech. We mentioned slowing down audio, but use it specifically to dissect connected speech. Play a fast sentence like, I don't know what to do, at 0.5x speed. You'll actually hear the sounds changing or disappearing, the two dropping in, don't know, maybe. Then gradually speed it up day by day. It helps decode those fast speech mysteries.
Trick 3. Sound isolation apps with context. Use tools like Forvo, where you can hear words pronounced by native speakers. But here's the trick. Listen to the word within the example phrase they provide. Focus intensely just on your target sound within that natural context. It stops the sound from feeling too artificial or isolated.
Trick 4. Mnemonic devices for articulation. Create mental images or physical feelings to remember tricky mouth positions. For the voiceless, think, maybe picture sticking your tongue out slightly, like being cheeky. For the sound, associated with the feeling of bunching your tongue back in your mouth. These little memory hooks can really help recall the physical action needed.
Trick 5. Daily dictation exercises, short bursts. We mentioned transcription, but make it a super short daily habit. Just transcribe 1 or 2 sentences from a podcast or news clip. Force yourself to write down exactly what you hear, including all the merged sounds and dropped letters, then check against a transcript if available. It's a tough but brilliant diagnostic tool.
Trick 6. Pair listening with visual cues, lip reading. Find videos where you can clearly see the speaker's mouth. Try watching a short segment with the sound OFF first. Try to guess what they're saying just from their lip movements. Then turn the sound on. This powerfully connects the visual shape of the mouth to the sound produced, which helps enormously in real-life conversations where you often have visual cues.
Trick 7. Gamify with structured learning apps. If motivation is dipping, lean into apps like Duolingo, Memrise, or specialized pronunciation apps that use points, streaks, and leaderboards. Sometimes that little bit of game structure is all you need to stay consistent with the less exciting drills.
Trick 8. Create sound journals specific data. Be a data collector. Keep a running list each day. Heard the D change to D in would you today? Or finally noticed the weak form of can in that podcast. Reviewing this weekly shows you concrete progress and highlights sounds that still need work.
Trick 9. Utilize podcasts with dual transcripts. Find resources like some language learning podcasts or websites that provide audio and a synchronized scrolling transcript. Reading along while listening locks the sound, the spelling, and the rhythm together in your brain simultaneously.
And lastly, trick 10. Role play with recorded dialogue. Don't just shadow single words or sentences. Grab a short dialogue from a movie clip or a YouTube video. Choose one character and try to mimic their entire conversational turn. The speed, the pauses, the intonation, everything. It pushes your practice towards real-world complexity.
All right, let's get really specific now. We're going to dive deep into some of those notoriously difficult English sounds and also tackle that huge challenge for advanced listeners, connected speech.
Let's start with a classic pair. Example 1, the ah and e grace sounds, the su sounds. These are a nightmare for speakers of many languages: Spanish, French, German, Russian. Basically anywhere this specific tongue between the teeth sound doesn't exist. They often substitute T, D, S, or Z.
Right, so we have think, that's voiceless, just air, versus this, a, voiced with a vibration. If I'm struggling to even hear the difference, let alone say it, what's the focused exercise?
Okay, first, minimal pairs. Think, sync, fix, sick, path, pass for the voiceless one, and then galidin, breathe, breed for the voiced one. But the key is the physical feeling. For think, lightly place the tip of your tongue between your teeth, or just behind your top teeth, and blow air. No voice. For a, this, same tongue position, but now hum. Vibrate your vocal cords. Put your fingers on your throat. You should feel vibration for this, that, but no vibration for think, 3. If you feel vibration on think, you're probably saying dink or zinc. Feel the difference.
Makes sense. Feel it, don't just hear it. Okay, next up. Example 2. The Jew sound, the English R. A huge hurdle for many Asian language speakers like Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, who might substitute an L or a sound that's sort of in between.
Yes, the English is usually made with the tongue bunched up or curled back slightly in the middle of the mouth. Crucially, the tip of the tongue generally doesn't touch the roof of your mouth like it does for L. The classic tongue twister is red lorry, yellow lorry, but start slow. Really focus on that tongue retraction for the two. Shadowing words with R in songs is great. Also, be aware of rhoticity. In American English, the R is usually pronounced wherever it's spelled. Car, hard. In standard British English, RP, it's often dropped unless a vowel follows. Kahad. You need exposure to both to avoid confusion.
Very important distinction. Example 3. Tricky vowels, like A versus 2. This is the difference in words like cat, Kate, and bet, bet. Many learners merge these or use a vowel sound that's somewhere in the middle.
This often comes down to jaw opening and tongue height. For the A in cat, apple, man, your jaw needs to be quite open and your tongue low and flat. For the in bet, pen, said, your jaw is more closed and your tongue is higher. Drill minimal pairs. Bat, bet, gas, gas, track, trek. Record yourself. Listen closely to native speaker recordings focusing only on that vowel quality. You have to train your ear to perceive the difference reliably before you can produce it accurately.
Okay, those are key individual sounds, but now let's tackle what might be the biggest hurdle for really advanced listening. Connected speech. This is why native speech sounds so fast and blurry sometimes.
Absolutely. Connected speech is where dictionary pronunciation goes out the window. There are several key features, but let's focus on 3 main ones that cause confusion: assimilation, elision, and weak forms. Assimilation is when a sound changes to become more like a neighboring sound. It makes speech smoother and faster. A super common example is did you. At natural speed, the final D of did often merges with the initial J sound of you to create a D sound, like in judge. So did you eat sounds like dija eat. If you're listening for clear did and you, you'll miss it entirely.
Ah, right. Or like handbag often sounds like handbag.
Exactly. The N changes to M because the following sound is B, which is made with the lips, just like M. Another one, good boy, can sound like good boy. The D assimilates to the B. Your ear needs to learn to expect these changes.
Okay, that sounds changing. What about elision? That sounds disappearing completely.
Precisely. Elision is the omission of sounds, again, usually to make articulation easier and faster. Final consonants are often victims. Think of next, please. The teat in next often gets dropped, especially before another consonant. Next, please. Or I must go becomes I must go.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes whole syllables can go, like library often becomes library, or comfortable becomes comfortable. Your ear needs to learn to fill in the gaps, recognizing the word even when a sound is missing.
And the third one, weak forms, often involving the schwa sound.
Yes, weak forms are absolutely crucial for understanding English rhythm because English is stress-timed. The little grammatical function, words like a, and, the to, for, can, have, are usually unstressed, and their vowel sound reduces to the neutral, indistinct schwa sound. Hence like, so I want to go to the shop for a book isn't pronounced with clear oo and or sounds. It's pronounced something like, I want to go to the shop for a book. Learning to hear those little schwa sounds as representing those function words rather than listening for their full pronunciation is essential for decoding the stream of speech.
That's incredibly helpful. Understanding those 3 assimilation, elision, weak forms really explains why native speech sounds the way it does. Okay, let's quickly connect some common roadblocks back to the solutions we've discussed. If someone is really stuck on the challenge, difficulty distinguishing similar sounds, even after lots of listening.
The targeted solution is consistent, daily, high-intensity drilling with minimal pairs focused specifically on those sounds. Use the apps, record yourself, force your brain to make the distinction until it becomes automatic. Don't rely on just passive listening.
What about the challenge? Lack of motivation. The drills feel boring, the progress feels slow.
Mix it up. If minimal pairs feel like a chore today, switch to shadowing a scene from your favorite movie. Sing along loudly to an English song you enjoy. Use one of the gamified apps. The key is consistent exposure, so find ways to make it engaging for you.
And for people with genuine challenge, time constraints. Life is busy.
Embrace the micro sessions. 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes of minimal pairs on the bus. 5 minutes of shadowing one difficult sentence while making coffee. 5 minutes of reviewing your sound journal before bed. Break it down into tiny, achievable chunks that fit into the gaps in your day.
Finally, the big one, challenge, lack of feedback. How do I know if I'm actually improving or just practicing mistakes?
Use the tools. Record yourself and use feedback apps for objective phonetic analysis. And when you talk to native speakers in language exchanges, be direct. Can you please tell me if my V sound was clear in that sentence? Don't just hope for feedback. Actively seek specific correction. That feedback loop, whether from tech or a person, is vital. Hashtag tag out outro. So, wrapping things up today. Training your ear for English sounds, it's not just some optional extra for advanced learners. It's fundamental. It's a skill that unlocks so much. Truly fluent listening, more confident speaking, deeper cultural understanding. It's incredibly rewarding. And hopefully you now feel like you have a clear roadmap. You understand the science behind it, the neuroplasticity, the L1 interference. You've got the essential tips for building a consistent practice, the clever tricks to accelerate it, and a better handle on tackling specific sound challenges in connected speech.
We've really tried to show you how to move beyond just recognizing words on a page to actually decoding that complex, fast, sometimes messy stream of real spoken English. This is about feeling confident, whether you're watching a film in a business meeting or just chatting with friends. That next level of confident interaction, it's totally within your reach. So we'll leave you with a final thought to ponder. Think about the next 90 days. What specific new sound map are you going to consciously build in your brain? Maybe it's finally nailing the difference between ship and sheep. Maybe it's learning to automatically hear when did you becomes deja. What sound challenge will you conquer and make automatic? If you found this deep dive valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's Advanced English Listening Practice podcast topic is how to guess unknown words while listening. Welcome to the deep dive. We're tackling something today that, well, I think everyone listening has felt. That really frustrating moment.
Oh, yeah.
You're deep into a conversation, maybe watching a movie, totally following along, and then bang, one word you don't know hits you.
And you freeze.
Exactly. You freeze. And your brain just grinds to a halt trying to figure that word out. And meanwhile,
poof, the next 3 sentences are gone. Just vanish.
Right. It's this cognitive paralysis almost.
It really is. And that moment, it's so destructive, not just, because you missed one word. It's the ripple effect, the immediate cognitive cost.
Yeah.
In those few seconds you spend scrambling, trying to rewind in your head or search your mental dictionary, the speaker's moved on, you've lost the thread. It's fundamentally an efficiency problem.
So what's the mission today?
The mission is to swap that panic for strategy, to give you some really powerful, intuitive ways to guess. We want to show you a kind of shortcut to staying well-informed, making sure you can keep pace with real, natural English without needing to know every single word.
Okay, I like that. A shortcut. This isn't just about memorizing more vocabulary, that it's more strategic.
Definitely. It's about restructuring how you even approach listening.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
Starting with, I guess, a fundamental mindset shift. Because that belief that you have to understand 100% of the words, that's the real trap, isn't it?
It is. It keeps you hitting that mental rewind button.
So the first big secret, and it feels like a secret sometimes,
Yeah.
is that even native English speakers don't catch every single word, especially not in fast movies or complex news reports.
Absolutely not. It's a total myth that fluency means perfection. Think about jargon or regional slang or just really specialized terms. Nobody knows it all.
Right. So what do fluent listeners do differently?
They trust the ambiguity. That's a key skill. They accept that there will be gaps sometimes. They don't panic. When an unknown word pops up, they sort of mentally flag it as, okay, unknown thing here, and just keep going. They trust that either the following sentences will clear it up, or maybe that word wasn't actually crucial for the main point anyway.
That's a huge difference. Because often, as learners, our instinct is the opposite. Stop everything. Analyze that word.
Exactly. A native speaker, hearing some technical term they don't know, might just file it as term X and listen for clarification. A learner often stops all processing to solve for X immediately, and in doing so, misses Y and Z completely.
So the real difference isn't just vocabulary size. It's the reaction time to the unknown.
Spot on. True fluency is about maintaining the flow of understanding. It's about being able to make smart, quick guesses when your vocabulary momentarily lets you down. It's comprehension resilience, maybe, not just lexical knowledge.
Let's make this concrete, that example you mentioned, the hiking one.
Right. Imagine you're listening to, say, a travel podcast, and the host says, after the extremely long, arduous hike, we finally reached the cabin, and everyone was absolutely famished.
Okay, and let's say famished is the unknown word. The panic reaction is to stop and think, what's famished?
But using the new mindset, what's the context? We know long, arduous hike. That means difficult, tiring.
High effort, yeah.
Energy drain.
And they reached the cabin. So they've stopped. They're resting. The state described famished is the result of that long, hard journey.
Logically, they must be tired, thirsty, or really, really hungry.
Exactly. And the intensity of absolutely famished doesn't usually suggest just a bit tired. It points towards a more urgent need. Hunger fits best.
So even without a dictionary, just using the situation, the surrounding words, you figure out famished means very hungry.
You've used circumstantial evidence, pure logic, to get a near-perfect guess. And quickly, without stopping the flow.
That's the core lesson then. Let go of needing perfection. Focus on communication. When you hit that unfamiliar word, keep listening. Trust your brain to work with the context.
Your brain is smarter than you think at this stuff, especially if you don't interrupt it with panic. Okay, so if the mindset is right, we're willing to let go. Trust the ambiguity. What are the actual tools? What tactics do we use?
Right. That brings us squarely to your best friend in listening. Context clues.
Now, when we say context, it's not passive, is it? It's not just hoping the meaning will magically appear.
No, it's active. You're deliberately looking at the words before the unknown one, the words after it. You're analyzing how those known pieces connect to the gap.
Like building a scaffolder on the missing piece.
Exactly. Context is your safety net. And we can actually break down the types of clues you can look for. If you actively hunt for these, guessing becomes much less random and much more reliable.
Okay, what's the first type?
The most straightforward is the definition clue. This is where the speaker basically gives you the answer right away.
They define their own term.
Yep. Like if someone says, he's an introvert, you know someone who prefers being alone rather than in big crowds.
Ah, okay. The phrase you know, or that is, often signals this kind of direct explanation.
Precisely. Or they might say, someone who prefers being alone, who finds they recharge their energy away from big, stimulating crowds. That extra detail clarifies the why behind the term. It's almost like a mini lesson embedded in the conversation.
Got it. So that's definition clues. What's next?
Second, we have example clues. Instead of a definition, the speaker gives concrete examples that illustrate the unknown word.
Like showing instead of telling.
Kind of, yeah. Imagine hearing. We discussed the carnivorous animals found in the Serengeti specifically, the lions, leopards, and cheetahs, which rely entirely on hunting meat.
Okay, lions, leopards, cheetahs. Everyone knows they hunt and eat meat. So even if carnivorous is new.
The examples nail it down immediately. You deduce carnivorous must mean meat eating. The specific examples clarify the general term.
Makes sense. But what if the examples aren't quite so obvious, or the context is trickier?
That's where the third type is super useful. Contrast clues. Here, the language sets up an opposition. The meaning of the unknown word is clarified by highlighting its opposite.
How does that work?
Take this sentence. Unlike his arrogant brother, Mark has always been deeply humble and modest about his achievements.
Okay, the key word there is unlike. That sets up the contrast.
Right. Assuming, humble meaning modest, not boastful, and Mark is like that, but his brother is unlike him.
Then arrogant must mean the opposite of humble.
Yeah.
Too proud, self-important, maybe boastful.
Exactly. You use the known word, humble, and the contrast structure, unlike, to pinpoint the meaning of the unknown word, arrogant. It's a really efficient way to leverage what you already know.
Cool. So definition, example, contrast. What's the fourth type?
This one's maybe the most critical for listening, specifically. Tone and emotion clues, how something is said.
Ah, the nonverbal stuff.
Well, it's verbal, but it's the way the words are spoken. The delivery often gives away the meaning instantly, even if the word itself is totally new.
Give me an example.
If someone says, the news about the merger was absolutely devastating, and they say it with a really low, slow, sad voice, maybe almost a whisper.
You immediately know devastating means something terrible, tragic, really bad, even if you never heard the word before.
The emotion in the voice confirms the meaning. It bypasses the need for a dictionary definition in that moment, especially useful in movies, drama, or just, emotionally charged conversations.
Right. The tone tells you if it's good news, bad news, surprising news. That makes a lot of sense.
These four types, definition, example, contrast, and tone emotion, they form your basic context toolkit. Actively listening for these clues makes guessing a structured skill.
Okay, toolkit acquired. Now, you mentioned linguistic detective work earlier. This sounds like digging even deeper, connecting the actual sounds of words to meaning. Here's where it gets really interesting. Yeah. This is about looking inside the word itself.
Yeah.
When you hear something unfamiliar, the next check should be kind of, hang on, does it sound like or look like another word I already know?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that English words often aren't islands. They belong to families sharing a common root.
Like act.
Perfect example. If you know the root act, meaning to do or perform, you suddenly see the connection between active, activity, activate, actor, actively. They all share that core idea.
So you're not learning 5 separate words. You're learning one core concept with variations.
Precisely. It shifts you from learning lists of individual words to understanding semantic clusters, groups of related meanings. Think about dict, meaning to say or declare.
Okay, so predict, to say beforehand.
You got it. And prediction, dictate, dictator, contradict.
Yeah.
They all stem from that root. If you hear predictable, your brain can quickly grab predict and know it relates to something being known or said in advance.
That recognition must speed things up a lot. But you also mentioned affixes, prefixes, and suffixes.
Ah, yes, the real power tools. Especially for advanced learners encountering more complex vocabulary, often built from Latin or Greek parts. Mastering common affixes is a huge leverage point.
We know the common ones like un for not or for aiming.
Right, unhappy, play. Simple enough. But think about slightly more academic or formal prefixes, like mal.
Mel, like in malfunction.
Exactly. Mal means badly or wrongly. So malfunction is working badly. Malnourished is nourished badly. Malicious suggests bad intent. Knowing mal gives you the negative flavor instantly, even if the rest of the word is fizzy.
Okay, that's useful. What about another one?
How about contra, meaning against or opposite?
Contradict.
To speak against.
Spot on. Or if you hear contraflow in traffic news or contrary evidence in a legal discussion, you immediately grasp the against or opposing nature of the concept. You've guessed the function of the word.
That's really powerful. Feels like decoding. What about the endings, the suffixes?
Suffixes are often even more revealing because they frequently tell you the type of word it is, a noun, an adjective, a verb.
Like anology.
Perfect. Now your exology at the end, you know it's a noun and it means the study of something. Biology, psychology, sociology, or think about esocide.
Like homicide. Yeah. It means killing. Homicide, killing a human. Insecticide, killing insects. Suicide, killing oneself. These suffixes are like reliable labels on the word. Synthesis time, without hopeless. Simple means full of joyful.
Okay, let's try putting it all together. Synthesis time. Say I hear the word careless, and maybe I don't know it.
Right. Your brain should quickly break it down. You probably know care. And you know the suffix list means without.
So care plus without care.
Bingo. You've accurately deduced the meaning. Lacking care, not paying attention. And the beauty is, this deconstruction happens almost instantly once you're tuned into it. You don't pause the listening flow. You analyze as you listen.
This is definitely moving beyond basic vocabulary memorization into understanding the structure of the language itself.
That's the goal for advanced listening comprehension.
Okay, so we've talked mindset, context clues within the sentence, and even dissecting the words themselves. But context is bigger than just the surrounding words, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to widen the lens again. Think about the entire situation. Where are you? What's happening around you? What's the overall topic? All of this provides crucial information.
Like if you're watching something, visuals.
Exactly. Visual context is huge. Remember the cooking show example? The chef says, now we need to saute these onions. And you see them frying onions quickly in a hot pan with a little oil.
The action defines the word. You see saute happening.
Precisely. The image and the sound locked together. Yes, saute means fry quickly in fat. You didn't need a dictionary. You needed your eyes and ears working together.
And this applies even without literal visuals, right? Like the topic of the conversation.
Definitely. Topic context is like setting a filter. If you know you're listening to a deep dive about, say, space exploration, and you hear an unfamiliar word like trajectory or propulsion,
you can be pretty sure it relates to space travel, not cooking or gardening.
Right. It narrows the field of possibilities dramatically. If the topic is health, unknown words are likely medical. If it's finance, they're likely economic. The topic creates a kind of semantic boundary.
Okay, that makes sense. Setting and topic. What else is part of this broader context?
We touched on tone earlier, but let's talk specifically about intonation and stress in delivery. We often focus so much on what words are said, we miss the importance of how they're said.
You mean like which words the speaker emphasizes?
Exactly. When a speaker deliberately stresses a word, makes it a bit louder, maybe slows down slightly, or pauses right before it, they're flagging it as important.
Signaling, pay attention to this one.
Pretty much. Stressed words are usually the key carriers of meaning the main nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. If you miss an unstressed the or a, it usually doesn't matter much, but miss a stressed keyword.
And you might lose the core idea of the sentence.
Right. So listening for the stress helps you focus your attention on the most important parts and connecting back to emotion.
If someone says a concert was phenomenal, with real excitement and energy in their voice.
The sheer amazement tells you phenomenal. I mean, something incredibly good, amazing, outstanding. The emotion basically defines the word for you right there and then.
Okay. Situation, topic, stress, emotion.
Yeah.
Anything else in this wider context?
Yes, one more really important layer, especially for fluency. Collocations.
Word partnerships.
Yeah.
Words that naturally go together.
Exactly. Native speakers use these fixed or semi-fixed phrases constantly. Things like make a decision, take a risk, heavy rain, deeply disappointed. They just sound right together.
And how does recognizing these help with guessing?
Well, it reduces cognitive load. If you hear one part of a common collocation, your brain can often predict the other part. Or if one word in the phrase is unknown, the familiar parts guide your guess for the whole unit.
So if you hear, we need to make a quick I, and the context is about choosing something.
But decision is the extremely high probability word to fill that blank because make a decision is such a strong collocation. Recognizing these patterns makes listening faster and guessing more accurate.
And this works for idioms too, right? They're basically long collocations.
Absolutely. Think about I couldn't catch the last word. If you know that in this phrase, catch commonly means hear or understand.
You instantly get the meaning. I didn't hear the final word clearly. You don't need to analyze catch, literally. You recognize the whole chunk.
Understanding these natural pairings, lexical gravity, as some call it, is a hallmark of advanced listening. Okay, so we have the mindset, the context tools, the word analysis techniques. Now let's talk application and pitfalls. The single biggest mistake, as we keep saying, is stopping the flow.
Right, getting stuck on that one word.
You have to resist that urge. Focus on the main idea. Trust that the speaker will often clarify, provide examples, or the overall message will become clear even with that one gap. Stopping breaks your comprehension entirely.
Let's use that example about the employee. Negligent.
Right. Imagine hearing, he was fired last week for being negligent. He kept forgetting to lock the store at night.
Okay, pause there. If negligent is the unknown word, and you stop listening there to puzzle it out,
you miss the crucial next part. The very next sentence, he kept forgetting to lock the store, defines negligent through a specific example of carelessness or failing in his duty.
The clarification came right after, but you missed it because you were stuck.
Exactly. Keep listening. More often than not, the context you need is coming right up.
Let's try another quick practice scenario, maybe a conversation.
Okay. Imagine person A says, the atmosphere in the classroom became really tense as soon as the principal walked in.
Okay, tense. If I don't know it, what clues do I have? Principal walks in, atmosphere changes. Usually principal showing up unexpectedly makes people
nervous, uncomfortable, awkward.
Yeah. So tense probably means something like nervous or uncomfortable. The situation gives it away.
Perfect. Or how about, wow, the house was such a mess after the party, it took us 3 hours to clean up.
Mess. Clue. Took hours to clean. Means it must have been very dirty, disorganized, untidy.
Spot on. One more, slightly trickier. That thriller movie was absolutely gripping. I completely forgot to check my phone the entire time.
Gripping. Clue. Forgot to check phone during a movie. Yeah. That only happens if the movie is.
Super interesting. Holding your attention completely.
Yeah. So gripping means extremely interesting, captivating.
You're nailing it. See how the surrounding information provides the definition. It even works for idioms. Person A. Sorry, I can't come into work today. I'm feeling a bit under the weather.
Under the weather. Clue. Can't come to work. Reason people usually miss work.
Feeling sick. Unwell.
Right. So under the weather means feeling ill.
Let's do one more, a little dialogue. Lily says, my computer's been acting weird since I clicked that link. Mark replies, oh no, maybe you should run a scan. With all the cybersecurity threats these days, like hackers trying to steal data.
Okay, Lily doesn't know cybersecurity, but Mark mentions computers acting weird, hackers stealing data.
So Lily can deduce cybersecurity must be about
protecting computers. From hackers and threats. Security for the cyber world.
Exactly. She used the surrounding concepts, computers, hackers, threats, to figure out the general meaning of cybersecurity. That's the process in action.
Okay, that feels practical. Now, what about the mistakes? The traps we fall into, especially as we get more advanced.
Right, common mistakes. We know about stopping the audio and translating directly. Those are basic traps. But advanced learners sometimes fall into slightly different ones.
Like what?
One is over-relying on cognates. You know, words that look similar in your language in English.
Ah, the false friends.
Yeah, sometimes they're true friends, but sometimes the meaning has shifted. Like sympathy in English. It sounds like words for liking or agreement in some other languages.
But in English, it specifically means feeling sorry for someone's bad situation.
Exactly. So if you rely on the cognate meaning, you misunderstand the emotion completely. The rule is, trust the English context first, not the cognate connection.
Good point. What's another advanced trap?
Ignoring pronunciation details and stress. You might know a complex word perfectly when you read it, like analysis or determine. But spoken English often has weak forms, sounds get linked or dropped, and stress patterns can be tricky, like analysis versus analysis. If you haven't connected the written form to the actual sound and rhythm...
You won't recognize it when you hear it spoken naturally, even though you know the words.
Right. The solution is active listening for the sounds, and maybe even repeating shadowing to get the rhythm right. Pay attention to where the stress falls in longer words.
Okay, so don't just learn the spelling, learn the sound and stress. And a third mistake.
Overanalyzing grammar while listening. Trying too hard to figure out if that was past perfect or a passive construction.
Yeah, getting lost in the structure instead of the meaning.
For real-time listening, your priority has to be meaning. Who did what to whom? What's the main point? You can always analyze the grammar later if you need to, maybe from a transcript. But in the moment, focus on comprehension.
So knowing the techniques is one thing, but making them automatic, that takes practice, right? You called it training the guessing muscle.
Absolutely. It's a skill, and skills need deliberate practice. Just listening passively isn't enough to really sharpen this intuition. We need focused exercises.
Okay, what kind of exercises work best?
I recommend 4 key ones. First is the context challenge. This is crucial. Listen to something. When you hear an unknown word, let the sentence finish. Then pause.
Okay.
Write down the sentence. Now give yourself just 30 seconds, no more, to write down your best guess for the word's meaning based only on that context.
Then check the dictionary.
Then check the dictionary and compare. Did you get it right? Close. Way off. This forces you to practice the guessing process under a little pressure and shows you how often your intuition is actually pretty good. Builds confidence like crazy.
I like that. Active guessing, then verification. What's next?
The word family game. This is more about building your underlying knowledge structure. Pick a common root word like port, meaning carry.
Okay. Port.
Now, brainstorm all the related words you know or can find. Transport, carry across. Import, carry in. Export, carry out. Portable, able to be carried. Report, carry back information. Support, carry from beneath.
Ah, I see. You're building the network, the connections.
Exactly. You stop seeing them as random words and start seeing the shared core meaning. It makes the vocabulary feel less vast and more interconnected.
Smart. Exercise 3.
Movie scene listening. This brings in the visual and emotional context we talked about. Pick a short scene, maybe a minute long with plenty of dialogue. Watch it without any subtitles first.
Okay, forcing reliance on ears and eyes.
Your goal is purely to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words using everything else: the actors' faces, their tone, the setting, the action. What's the vibe? What just happened? Then watch it again with subtitles to check your guesses.
That sounds challenging, but effective for integrating all the clues.
It really trains your brain to process listening as a multi-sensory experience, not just word decoding. And the last one? Shadow practice.
Repeating what you hear immediately.
Yes, trying to mimic the speaker's rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation as closely as possible, almost simultaneously.
How does that help guessing?
Because it forces you to internalize the natural flow of spoken English. The linked sounds, the dropped syllables, gonna, wanna, shoulda, the rhythm, when you're comfortable with how native speakers actually sound.
Your brain doesn't waste energy trying to decode the familiar parts of the sentence.
Exactly. It frees up processing power to focus solely on that one tricky unknown word. Shadowing makes the whole listening process more efficient, which directly helps your guessing accuracy.
These are great practical exercises. Now, how do we keep track of our progress and what we're learning from these guesses?
That's where the Guess Bank comes in. It's essentially a learning journal specifically for your guessed words.
Okay, what goes in the bank?
For each word you successfully guess or even get close on, you should record 4 things. 1, the word itself. 2, your original guess, be honest. 3, the actual meaning from the dictionary check. And critically, 4, the context. Where did you hear it? What was the situation?
Why is the context part so important?
Because over time, you'll start seeing patterns. You'll notice, I correctly guessed gripping meant interesting when it was in a movie review context, or I figured out negligent related to carelessness when it was in that story about work.
So it reinforces how you figured it out, linking the strategy to the success.
Precisely. It proves to yourself that your guessing isn't just luck. It's based on recognizable patterns in English. It turns guessing from a mystery into a repeatable skill.
This whole approach feels much more empowering than just feeling frustrated by unknown words.
That's the idea. And remember to be patient with yourself. Every single time you encounter an unknown word, it's not a failure, it's a practice opportunity.
Like hearing about flight booking and the agent says, "Sorry, that flight is fully booked."
The context booking flights, the apology instantly tells you fully booked means full, no seats available.
Or a friend gets a promotion and says they're over the moon.
The excitement in their voice, the positive context, it screams extremely happy. You guess it, you remember it, your confidence grows. Successful guessing builds on itself.
So trust the process, trust your brain, and stay curious.
Couldn't have said better myself. Hashtag tag tag outro. All right, so let's do a really quick recap. Your cheat sheet for guessing unknown words while listening. First, use context like a detective look before and after the word. Second, big one, don't panic. Focus on the main idea. Keep the flow going.
Right.
Third, listen actively for tone, stress, and emotion. They often give the meaning away instantly. Fourth, use the wider situation and the topic to narrow down the possibilities.
Got it.
Fifth, look inside the word, recognize those roots and affixes, the building blocks. Sixth, trust that more information or clarification is often coming if you just keep listening. And seventh, practice these techniques deliberately.
Let's nail it with one final example. Imagine hearing. The whole neighborhood was plunged into utter chaos after the massive power outage. Neighbors were scrambling for flashlights, lighting candles, and shouting across the street.
Okay, chaos, unknown word. But the context, power outage, people scrambling, shouting, it paints a picture of
Disorder, confusion, panic.
exactly, absolute disorder and confusion. The context defines chaos perfectly. That combination of logic, word clues, and situational awareness is the whole game.
That makes sense. It's about putting all the pieces together.
It is, and maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Fluent listening isn't really about knowing every single word. It's about understanding enough to keep the conversation, the story, the information flowing.
And the more you practice these guessing strategies,
The better you get, the less you need to guess over time. And the more confident and fluent your listening becomes. It's a positive cycle.
fantastic. That's incredibly helpful. If you enjoyed this lesson, like, share, and comment to help others improve their listening too. Subscribe to Learn English Lab for more listening practice and real-life English learning tips every week.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice podcast topic name is How to Improve Active Listening Skills. So, welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a skill today, one that really determines whether you move from just being a competent English speaker to, well, a truly confident and fluent communicator. We're talking about active listening. And this isn't just, basic advice. We're really going to try and tackle the cognitive mechanics behind deep comprehension. Think about this for a second. Have you ever been in, say, an important English conversation, maybe a critical business meeting, could be a university lecture, or even just a really nuanced discussion with someone, and you realize that while you heard every sound, your mind was kind of elsewhere. Maybe you were busy prepping your brilliant reply in your head, or distracted because you think you just made a grammar mistake, or maybe you were just hearing noise, like sound waves hitting your ears, without actually locking on to the speaker's real intent or, the emotional subtext.
That experience, I think that's the universal stumbling block, especially for advanced learners. It just perfectly illustrates that fundamental difference between, let's say, sensory input and genuine intellectual engagement. Active listening, well, it's often seen as a soft skill, right? But for language learners, I'd argue it's actually one of the highest level cognitive functions you could master.
A superpower, almost.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It really is the superpower that elevates your comprehension and your response from just being, adequate to being truly empathetic, insightful. So our mission today in this deep dive is to move past that superficial idea of listening and really understand the specific techniques that train your brain to filter, process, and crucially, retain complex spoken English.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then, because a lot of learners, they seem to hit a wall, don't they? They focus so intensely on output, speaking and writing. And they kind of neglect the input process. But here's the thing. The quality of your output, well, it's entirely dependent on the quality of your input, isn't it?
Absolutely. They're completely linked.
So today we're going to cover that essential distinction, hearing versus listening. We'll explore why active listening is fundamentally a cognitive skill, why it's so essential for fluency, and then the really practical part. We'll arm you with some actionable techniques to build that listening stamina and depth. Okay, first things first, let's nail down this fundamental difference. It's non-negotiable, really. Hearing, that's entirely passive, it's physical.
Right.
It's just the sensory thing. What happens when sound waves vibrate, those little cilia in your inner ear, requires absolutely zero mental effort, no focus needed.
Exactly. Whereas listening, well, that's where the cognitive work kicks in. It's the active, effortful processing the brain does to assign meaning, context, and intent to those sounds we hear. And importantly, in cognitive science, we actually view active listening as an exercise in something called selective attention. Your brain is deliberately choosing which stimuli to prioritize.
Okay.
And which sounds to just filter out as, background noise.
I think we need a really clear example here. Something that highlights that jump from just passive sound hitting your ears to that sudden ignition, you called it, that selective attention kicking in.
Okay, yeah, let's use a classic scenario. Imagine you're sitting in a really bustling train station. Loads going on.
Right, noisy.
Very noisy. Your ears are just passively picking up physical sounds.
Yeah.
Announcements echoing, people shuffling past, phones ringing, the rumble of trains coming and going. That's just passive hearing. Your brain recognizes the sound, sure, but it dedicates almost none of your limited working memory to actually processing the meaning of all that crowd noise. It's just there. Now, let's say suddenly you hear your name called out clearly over the station's speaker system. Well, passenger, your name, please go to.
Okay. Instant focus.
Exactly. That instantaneous shift where your entire cognitive capacity just snaps into focus on that specific sound.
Yeah.
That's the physical manifestation of selective attention. That's the start of active listening. Your brain has just prioritized that specific stimulus above all the other noise.
That distinction really helps clarify the difference between passive and active listening, then. So passive listening, that's characterized by a pretty low level of cognitive engagement, right?
Low.
You might catch a word here, a phrase there, but you're not actively building the whole picture, the narrative. And this leads to that classic problem, thinking about your reply while the other person is still talking.
Right. Planning your next move.
Which makes you easily distractible by things inside your head or outside, and often results in interrupting or, maybe worse, jumping to conclusions, judging based on incomplete information.
That is the crucial problem, yes. When you're passively listening, your goal is basically preparing to speak, not preparing to understand. Active listening completely flips that script. It means your cognitive resources, your brain power, are fully allocated to engaging with the complete nuanced meaning of what's being said. You're deliberately training yourself to be patient, to be open-minded, and you actively delay forming your counterargument or even just your response until the speaker has actually finished. The number one priority is confirming you've understood, grasping their perspective.
And how does this connect directly to actually learning English, especially for someone who's already at a pretty advanced level?
Well, think about it. When you're just passively hearing English, your working memory might register the sound, okay, but it doesn't effectively encode the really complex stuff like the specific syntax being used or maybe an idiomatic phrase and how it fits.
It just washes over you.
Pretty much. Active listening, on the other hand, it's demanding work for the brain. It's constantly running these sophisticated processes in the background. It's analyzing different pronunciations it hears. It's integrating new vocabulary into the mental maps you already have. It's decoding the tone of voice. And simultaneously, it's parsing complex grammar structures. Yeah. So if you're truly listening actively, you're not just acquiring the language faster, you're acquiring it more accurately, because you're basically observing native patterns of speech under a microscope, with intense focus.
So it's like the difference between seeing a textbook example of, say, a modal verb.
Right.
And actually noticing how a native speaker uses it naturally to maybe soften a statement, to hedge in a real high-stakes conversation.
That's it exactly. You're catching the application in context, not just the rule.
Okay, let's challenge a really common habit then. We see this a lot among language learners, especially when they're prepping for, say, fluency exams or big job interviews. They pour all their energy into speaking practice, often neglecting listening. Why? Because they're terrified they won't be able to produce the language under pressure.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The relationship between listening and speaking, it isn't competitive, is it? It's symbiotic. You fundamentally cannot upgrade your speaking skills beyond a certain point without first becoming a significantly better listener.
That's the critical takeaway. Input must feed output. It's non-negotiable for fluency.
So let's break down the direct benefits, the so what, for the advanced English learner who really integrates genuine active listening into their daily routine.
Okay, let's list them out. Firstly, and this is a big one, you significantly accelerate your ability to understand rapid real-life English, the kind you hear in movies, meetings, fast conversations.
Why is that?
Because your brain has literally trained itself to quickly filter for the meaning over just the noise, the raw sound. It gets better at prediction and processing speed.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
Building on that, actively listening means you start recognizing and, importantly, retaining new advanced vocabulary and those subtle little discourse markers, words like however, consequently. But you learn them in context.
Not just from a list.
Right. This helps long-term retention much, much better than, say, flashcards, because that new word or phrase is linked to a real use case, a situation, an emotion, how it fits into an argument structure.
So it sticks better.
Definitely. Thirdly, and this is maybe the most important for sounding truly fluent active listeners, rapidly notice, internalize, and sort of map the natural prosody of English.
Prosody. Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. Prosody is basically the music of the language.
Yeah.
It's the rhythm, the stress patterns on words and sentences, the rise and fall of intonation. It's how English flows.
Got it. The melody.
Precisely. And internalizing this prosody leads directly to the fourth benefit. It dramatically improves your own speaking rhythm and tone. Your English starts to sound much more authentic and less like you're translating word for word from your native language in your head.
Okay, that's huge.
And finally, maybe the ultimate goal. By truly understanding the speaker's intent, not just their words, active listening facilitates much deeper, more authentic connections with people, which is really what communication is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. I want to linger on this music of the language idea, this prosody, because I think that's where advanced learners often miss some of the most crucial information. English communication is just packed with these subtle tonal cues that often carry more weight than the literal words themselves. So what specific nonverbal, or rather tonal hints, should people be deliberately tuning into?
Good question. We need to actively analyze variations in how things are said, the vocal delivery. For instance, pay attention to pitch variation.
Like how high or low the voice is?
Yes. A higher pitch, maybe combined with a slightly faster speaking speed, often signals genuine excitement or positive emphasis. It might mean something important or good is about to be revealed.
Okay.
Conversely, a sudden drop in volume, or maybe a slower, more monotone delivery. They can signal a lack of confidence, maybe reluctance, or perhaps it's a topic the speaker finds difficult or sensitive. The tone tells you something's up.
What about pauses? Silence can be powerful too, right?
Definitely. Consider the strategic use of silence, or the pause.
Yeah.
If you notice a sudden, really pronounced, maybe even slightly long pause right before a speaker gives a key piece of information or answers a critical question, that hesitation is a massive signal.
What does it signal?
It often indicates cognitive load. They're thinking hard, they might be uncertain or wrestling with a complex idea internally. Or, and this is common in professional settings, they might be carefully engaging in hedging.
Hedging, like being deliberately vague.
Or cautious, yes. Choosing politically safe or slightly ambiguous language. That pause itself often tells you more than the 5 words that eventually follow it. You need to listen to the silence.
That's fascinating. And recognizing emotional signaling, you mentioned idioms earlier.
Yes, that's vital too. An advanced listener knows that certain idioms or common phrases are almost always tied to specific emotions or situations, regardless of their literal dictionary meaning.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If a speaker says something like, "We're really walking on eggshells here," or "That decision really opened a Pandora's box," the active listener doesn't just hear the words. They immediately process that these phrases signal danger, complexity, maybe interpersonal tension, or unforeseen negative consequences. You understand the mood and the weight of the situation instantly without needing to mentally dissect the metaphor.
So it's about understanding the feeling behind the phrase.
Correct. This kind of integrated comprehension, words plus tone plus context plus idioms, that's what really defines advanced listening.
Okay, let's move from the theory prosody, selective attention, into the really practical, actionable stuff. The exciting part here is that this isn't just some innate talent you either have or don't. Active listening is a structured skill. It's trainable.
Absolutely. We can definitely rewire our brains, so to speak, to be more present and more effective listeners.
So where do we start? Tip 1.
Let's start with tip 1. Be fully present. Now, for an advanced learner, this means more than just, putting your phone away, although that's important.
Right.
It really requires actively managing your cognitive load. That's the amount of information your working memory can juggle effectively at any one time. Undivided attention needs profound, sustained mental commitment.
Especially difficult in today's world, full of distractions.
Exactly. Environments are often designed for distraction.
So how do we make that commitment actionable? Physically, okay, put the phone away, stop multitasking, check. But the mental commitment that feels harder, how do you do that?
It involves actively silencing that inner voice. Maybe the inner translator trying to convert everything back to your native language.
Yeah.
Or the inner critic judging the speaker or yourself. So before you go into any challenging listening task, maybe it's an important lecture or a really dense conversation, you need to consciously, mentally affirm your intention. Something like, okay, my only goal for the next 15 minutes is comprehension, not reply, not judgment, just understand.
Setting that intention.
Yes. And that focused intention dramatically changes the outcome of your practice. Think about intentional listening practice versus passive exposure.
Oh.
Passively listening to, say, a news broadcast while you're driving or doing chores might help you stay familiar with the general rhythm of English, sure, but it probably won't significantly push your comprehension forward.
Right, because your focus is split.
Correct. Now try this instead. Dedicate just 10 minutes a day. Sit down, maybe with headphones, and focus completely on a challenging audio source. Perhaps an academic talk, a fast-paced interview, something slightly above your comfort level. That single act of eliminating all competing stimuli maximizes the amount of new vocabulary and complex structures your brain actually encodes and learns from.
10 minutes of focused effort beats an hour of passive background noise.
Essentially, yes. Quality over quantity. Okay, moving to tip 2. Listen with curiosity, not judgment. This is a huge mindset shift.
How so?
When you approach a speaker, or maybe a difficult piece of audio, with preconceived notions, thinking, oh, I already know all about this topic, or maybe, their accent is strange, or they really should have phrased that differently.
We all do that sometimes.
We do. But when you do, your brain goes into a kind of defensive filtering mode. It often ends up rejecting new or challenging input because it doesn't fit your existing framework or expectations.
Okay, so judgment blocks learning. What's the alternative?
Curiosity. Curiosity is the engine of learning. It forces your mind to stay alert, open, and engaged. Instead of internally judging the speaker's accent, their delivery, or the content itself, you should be actively asking yourself deep curiosity questions.
Like what?
Things like, okay, what's the speaker's primary objective here? Are they trying to persuade me, inform me, maybe console someone, or what specific grammatical structure are they using right now to convey that particular subtlety? Or even, what can I learn from their specific word choice here? Like, why did they use that adjective and not another one?
Turning it into an analytical exercise.
Precisely. This approach transforms every single listening input, even challenging ones, into a constructive learning opportunity, rather than just a test you might fail.
Okay, tip 3. This one is about the power of note-taking. Now, for advanced listening, you're not suggesting we try to transcribe everything, are you?
Definitely not. That would be counterproductive. This isn't about transcription. Think of note-taking, whether it's actual pen and paper or just rapid mental notes, as a physical mechanism. It helps ensure the information moves from just being auditory input into your active working memory for processing, and then hopefully into long-term retention. Even just mentally summarizing helps strengthen comprehension.
So what should we be noting down when tackling complex stuff like a lecture or a long meeting?
Be highly selective. Don't even try to capture every word or every minor detail. Instead, focus on the structural elements. Jot down things like the speaker's main arguments or points.
Oh, the big ideas.
Yes, maybe the key evidence they use to support each argument. And crucially, make a note of any new expressions or vocabulary that signal maybe a high level of formality or hedging language or just something you haven't heard used that way before.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you're listening to a talk on, I don't know, climate science. It's complex. You might only jot down something very brief, like argument 1, irreversible change, evidence mentioned, tipping points, key phrase noted. While we can tentatively suggest, okay, that signals hedging or uncertainty.
Just keywords and structural cues.
Exactly. Minimalist, but meaningful. And that leads perfectly into tip 4, listening for structure, specifically by focusing intently on those advanced signpost words and discourse markers.
Ah, the words that guide you through the talk.
That's right. Fluent speakers and well-organized presentations rely heavily on these clues as navigational aids for the listener. The key insight here is, even if you miss some specific vocabulary in a sentence, if you catch the signpost word, you can often still understand the conceptual flow, how the ideas connect.
Right, like knowing a contrast is coming up even if you didn't catch the first part perfectly.
Precisely. And this is fundamental for following complex arguments. Advanced learners need to recognize not just the basic ones, but the more subtle categories too. We all know sequence markers like firstly, secondly, finally. But pay close attention to markers that signal deeper analytical relationships. Words indicating contrast. Think, nevertheless. Conversely, in contrast, contrary to popular belief.
Okay.
Words signaling consequence or result. Consequently, therefore, as a result, thus, in light of these facts. And especially words that indicate refutation, arguing against something, or concession, admitting a point before countering it. Things like, admittedly, despite this, having said that, even though, nonetheless.
Wow, there are a lot of those.
There are. And the power of these signals, especially when the information load is high or the speaker is fast, it really can't be overstated.
How so?
If you hear someone say, for example, first, we'll discuss the proposed technical solution. However, that single word, however, immediately signals a major pivot. It tells your brain, okay, brace yourself, a complication, a problem, or a counter-argument is coming next.
It prepares you.
It acts like a cognitive safety net. It keeps you oriented in the flow of ideas, even if the language in the next sentence becomes technically dense or you miss a word or two. You still know the direction the argument is taking. Okay, as we move into more advanced application, it's really important to remember that active listening, true active listening, is highly interactive. It's not about just sitting there silently like a statue.
Right, you need to show you're engaged.
Exactly. It's about signaling that engagement. So beyond simple things like nodding, we need to employ targeted verbal cues, sometimes called minimal encouragers.
Like what?
Short phrases, just to show you're tracking the discussion. I follow, or, okay, that's an insightful point. Maybe even just go on. They signal, I'm with you.
But there's a higher level of interaction too, isn't there?
Yes, the apex skill, I'd say, of interactive listening is paraphrasing and reflection. This is where you go beyond just showing you heard the words. You demonstrate that you actually processed the meaning.
How does that work in practice?
You essentially internalize what the speaker just said, and then you rephrase the core idea back to them, but using your own words, often using slightly different vocabulary to show you're not just mimicking.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say a manager is explaining a complex new corporate strategy, maybe about restructuring. After they explain a key part, you might respond with something like, okay, so just to ensure I grasp this correctly, the primary objective here is resource consolidation, which means practically we need to merge departments A and B. Is that right?
Ah, so you're checking your understanding explicitly.
Exactly. This kind of confirmation technique, this paraphrasing, it serves three really important purposes. One, it confirms your comprehension is accurate. Two, it gives the speaker a chance to correct any subtle misinterpretations you might have made.
Okay.
And three, perhaps most importantly in professional contexts, it demonstrates profound respect. It proves you dedicated real cognitive energy to understanding their message, not just passively receiving it.
Right. It shows you were truly listening. Now, let's circle back to tone and emotion. You mentioned prosody earlier. How critical is picking up on those nuances, moving beyond just the literal words?
It's absolutely critical, especially for advanced communication. Recognizing subtle tonal shifts can literally save you from major professional errors or deep interpersonal misunderstandings. Active listeners must learn to break down the components of prosody.
Remind us what those are again.
Pitch, high-low, speed, fast-little, volume, loud, soft, and the overall emotional quality. Does the voice sound sad, joyful, nervous, bored, sarcastic? We need to analyze the nuance, not just guess happy or sad.
Okay. Can you give an example where the tone completely changes the meaning?
Let's take a common phrase used often in professional, maybe slightly indirect cultures. I think that suggestion is interesting.
The dreaded interesting.
Exactly. Now, if the speaker delivers that phrase with genuine enthusiasm, higher pitch, maybe leaning forward okay, it probably means they actually find it interesting. But if they deliver the exact same words at a low volume with a very slow, even tempo, maybe avoiding eye contact, the active listener immediately recognizes this often signifies passive aggression or subtle dismissal.
So interesting here means I don't like it, or that's a bad idea.
Quite possibly, yes. The word interesting is being used as a polite, face-saving way of saying, I disagree, or let's move on. If you ignore that tonal mismatch and only focus on the positive dictionary meaning of interesting, you've completely missed the real pragmatic intent. You might proceed thinking they agree, which could be disastrous.
Okay, so we need to listen for words and music. How can we structure this multi-layered approach? You mentioned the LARA formula earlier. Let's revisit that, maybe through this more advanced lens.
Good idea. So LARA provides a practical blueprint. L, listen carefully, which now we understand means rigorously blocking distractions and consciously managing your cognitive load. Full focus. A, analyze meaning. This goes beyond words. It's about understanding the speaker's pragmatic intent. What are they trying to achieve with these words? What's their underlying goal? Their emotional state.
Deeper analysis.
R, reflect back. This is that crucial paraphrasing step we just discussed. Using sophisticated paraphrasing to confirm you've grasped complex ideas accurately. And the final A, ask questions. But not just any questions. Asking specific, open-ended questions that genuinely seek to clarify complexity or demonstrate intellectual curiosity about their perspective. Not questions designed to trap them or show off your own knowledge.
Okay, LARA. Listen, analyze, reflect, ask. Let's apply it quickly to a complex work scenario.
Okay. Imagine a colleague is briefing you on a sudden product failure. They say something like, we thought the system update was seamless, but apparently there's been an unanticipated ripple effect causing multiple modules to fail sporadically across the network.
Okay, sounds bad. A passive listener might just hear fail and panic.
Right. But an active LARA listener does more. They listen carefully, L. Then they analyze, A, focusing on key phrases like unanticipated ripple effect and sporadically. What does that really mean? Then they reflect back, maybe saying, okay, so if I understand you correctly, the core update itself wasn't the direct problem, but the unexpected side effects of that update have destabilized multiple distinct systems, and it's happening inconsistently.
Much more specific.
Exactly. That targeted reflection immediately helps to isolate the nature of the problem, which is the first step to solving it. Then they might ask A, clarifying questions like, do we know which modules are most affected?
Very practical. Now, we have to address a major hurdle for advanced learners, listening stamina, that feeling of mental exhaustion after listening to complex English for a while.
Yes, this is huge. The high cognitive load we've been talking about, actively processing complex grammar, vocabulary, tone, context, it causes mental fatigue. And it happens much more quickly when you're doing it in a non-native language.
Why is it harder in a second language?
Because your brain is often doing double or triple duty. It might be simultaneously translating in the background, consciously parsing grammar rules, trying to integrate cultural context, and trying to understand the core message. It's simply more work.
So you just can't maintain that peak active listening for, say, an hour-long meeting without specific training?
For most learners, no. Not sustained, high-level active listening. It's like trying to sprint a marathon. You need to build up that stamina gradually.
How do you do that? What's the training plan?
We need to treat it like physical conditioning. Use a strategic interval-based approach. Don't try to listen intensely for an hour straight at first. Start small. Engage in maybe just 3 to 5 minutes of really intense focused listening on challenging material. Then take a brief, conscious mental break, maybe just 30 seconds to reset. Then go again.
Short bursts of focus.
Yes. And then try the 2-pass approach on a slightly longer piece of material, say 10 minutes. Listen once just for the general argument, the overall tone, the main points. Don't worry about details.
Get the gist first.
Right. Then listen a second time, but this time with a specific focus. Maybe you're listening specifically for examples of conditional clauses, if then, or trying to distinguish between affirmative and negative statements accurately, or tracking those signpost words we mentioned.
Layering the listening goals.
Exactly. And then, to really build stamina and push your limits, you need to increase the difficulty over time. Challenge yourself with denser material, maybe input that's spoken at a higher speed than you're comfortable with.
Like using the playback speed controls.
Could be. Or introduce audio that features multiple speakers talking, perhaps overlapping like a panel discussion or a debate. Or actively seek out materials featuring regional accents you find difficult, maybe Scottish, South African, strong regional American dialect.
Why focus on difficult accent?
Because it forces your brain's selective attention system to work much harder to filter and decode. It's like adding weight to the barbell. This gradually increases your tolerance for cognitive load, pushing that sustained high-fidelity processing window out towards that 15, 20, maybe even 30-minute mark. Okay, so we talked about building stamina. Now, how do we really cement retention? How do we move these concepts from short-term working memory into long-term knowledge? A great technique for structured practice is what I call LPRR. Listen, pause, reflect, repeat.
LPRR. Okay, break that down.
It's a practical way to apply something called retrieval practice, which is known to boost memory. First, you select a short audio clip, maybe just 30 seconds to a minute of complex speech.
Yeah.
You listen to that segment carefully.
Okay.
Then, immediately after it finishes, you hit pause. Stop the audio.
Right, pause, then.
Then comes the crucial step,
Right.
reflect. This means you actively try to summarize the segment you just heard, but using your own advanced English words. Articulate the core argument, the main point, or the speaker's intent out loud, or even just in your head.
Ah, so you're forcing your brain to retrieve the information.
Exactly. That's the retrieval practice moment. You're forcing your brain to pull back and process the information without just passively listening again or looking at a transcript. Then finally, you repeat. Listen to the same segment one more time.
I listen again.
To catch any important details you missed in your summary, or to compare how you phrased it versus how the speaker phrased it, it reinforces the learning and corrects misunderstandings.
Can we try an example? Let's say something academic.
Sure. Imagine you hear this sentence in a business context. Given the volatility of the geopolitical landscape, the firm's decision to liquidate its overseas assets was deemed prudent, although highly unpopular.
Okay, quite dense.
Yeah.
So I listen, then I pause, now reflect.
Right. Reflect in your own words. You might think or say, okay, so basically, they sold off their foreign property and investments. Why? Because the political situation internationally was unstable, risky. But people inside the company, or maybe the public, didn't like that decision.
Got it. I rephrased it simply.
Yes. That act of forced summarization confirms you understood the core meaning, the cause and effect, and the nuance, prudent versus unpopular. And doing that significantly boosts your memory retention of both the concept and vocabulary used. Then you'd listen again quickly to check.
LPRR. Listen, pause, reflect, repeat. I like that. Now, what about things beyond words and tone? Nonverbal cues.
Absolutely vital, especially in face-to-face or video communication. Advanced active listening must be a full sensory integration process. We have to pay careful attention to facial expressions, hand gestures, posture, overall body orientation.
Why are they so important?
Because these nonverbal elements often provide crucial context. Or, critically, sometimes they directly contradict the spoken word, revealing the true feeling or intention.
Can you give an example of that contradiction?
Let's go back to a subtle professional context. Imagine a colleague says, quite flatly, yes, we should definitely move forward with the proposed plan. The words sound affirmative, right?
Yes, definitely move forward.
But what if, as they say this, their arms are tightly crossed, their jaw is clenched, maybe they're avoiding eye contact or subtly shaking their head?
Ah, the body language is saying no way.
Exactly. Their body language is screaming reluctance, disagreement, or serious reservations, even though their words are technically positive. The active listener picks up on this mismatch instantly. They integrate the verbal and nonverbal.
So what would the active listener do then?
They might respond empathetically, but directly, perhaps saying something like, okay, I hear you saying we should move forward, but I'm sensing some hesitation perhaps. Your body language suggests there might be a reservation we should probably discuss before we fully commit. Is there something concerning you?
Wow, that's addressing the hidden message.
Yes. That level of integrated awareness, reading the words, the tone, and the body language, builds trust and, frankly, prevents projects from failing due to unvoiced concerns.
Okay, and how does becoming a better active listener help with your own speaking, specifically pronunciation?
It dramatically enhances your pronunciation awareness. When you listen with that dedicated focus to fluent speakers, your brain starts subconsciously and consciously recognizing subtle linguistic phenomena.
Like what kind of phenomena?
Things like how consonant clusters are often reduced in fast speech, like saying nest time instead of next time, or noticing how sounds link together between words linking R or intrusive R sounds in some accents, like lar and order.
Things you don't usually see written down.
Precisely. You start mapping out how native speakers actually manage the flow of rapid speech. You listen specifically for common reductions like should have instead of should have, or gonna instead of going to, wanna instead of want to. You also start noticing how sentences are naturally chunked together by intonation patterns to convey complex thoughts, rather than just being a string of words.
And hearing these helps you use them.
Absolutely. Hearing these patterns consistently and actively noticing them is the most direct pathway to eventually using them naturally yourself. Your brain stops trying to reproduce perfect dictionary sounds for each word and starts trying to reproduce the natural cadence, the rhythm, the music of fluent speech it's hearing.
Which brings us back to needing purposeful practice. You can't just listen aimlessly and expect all this to happen, right?
Correct. You should almost never listen aimlessly if your goal is improvement. Before you engage with any complex listening material, a podcast, a lecture, a news report, you must define your cognitive goal for that session.
What kind of goals?
Ask yourself, what is my primary focus this time? Is it expanding my vocabulary in this specific topic area? Am I trying to identify and understand the specific use of advanced heading language the speaker uses? Or maybe today, I'm just practicing mapping out cause and effect relationships by tracking those discourse markers like because, as a result, therefore.
So you narrow your focus for each practice session.
Yes. For instance, if you're listening to a detailed financial news analysis, your specific purpose for that 15-minute session might be to focus solely on identifying discourse markers that signal uncertainty or speculation phrases like it seems likely that, arguably, current projections suggest we might conclude.
And ignore everything else for that session.
Not ignore it completely, but your primary filter, your main cognitive effort, is directed towards that single, narrow objective. This prevents your brain from becoming overwhelmed by all the technical jargon or the speed. It keeps your focus sharp and makes your learning highly targeted and effective for that specific skill you're working on.
Okay. And finally, there's a big one. The crucial mindset shift. You touched on this earlier with judgment versus curiosity, but there's also fear, isn't there?
Yes, the fear factor. Many advanced English learners, even very competent ones, still operate under this paralyzing fear. Oh no, if I miss a single word, especially a low-frequency vocabulary item, then I failed. I didn't understand.
That pressure must be intense.
It is. And ironically, that anxiety dramatically increases your cognitive load. Worrying takes up brain power. And it often causes your overall comprehension to just collapse because you're so focused on the one thing you missed.
So how do you manage that anxiety?
You have to proactively manage it by changing your definition of success. Your goal is not 100% word-for-word dictionary comprehension. That's unrealistic even for native speakers sometimes. Your goal should be aiming for a high percentage of comprehension of the main meaning, the core ideas being presented, the overall structure of the argument, and the emotional context or tone.
And focus on the big picture.
Right. Confidence grows from accepting that imperfections exist in all communication. Mishearings happen. People miss words. It's normal. When your brain stops allocating precious working memory resources to panicking over that one missed adjective, that cognitive space frees up, allowing you to successfully process the complex syntax and meaning of the rest of the sentence or the next idea. It's about letting go of perfectionism.
Okay, so we've covered techniques, stamina, mindset. What's the ultimate benchmark? How do you know your active listening skills are really improving and integrating?
I think the highest benchmark of success is when you can seamlessly integrate your improved listening comprehension with your speaking practice. The final test of whether you've truly absorbed and processed a complex idea is your ability to then summarize it accurately, synthesize it with your own thoughts, and apply that knowledge orally in your own words.
Making the input active through output.
Precisely. We must encourage you, the listener, to make the content you listen to active. Don't just let it wash over you. After listening to something substantial, maybe a documentary, a presentation, even this deep dive, try summarizing the main arguments aloud. Imagine explaining it to a friend or colleague who wasn't there. Or try sharing your own refined opinion on the topic, consciously trying to use some of the new vocabulary or phrasing you absorbed.
Could you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you listen to a podcast about business strategy. Afterwards, you might articulate your takeaway by saying something like, okay, the presenters really highlighted the critical necessity of organizational agility, particularly concerning market diversification strategies, which, sounds like a pretty appropriate response given the current economic volatility we're seeing.
So you're using their concepts, maybe some of their language, but in your own constructed sentence.
Exactly. By externalizing the input in that way, you force deeper processing, and you really cement the learning. It closes the loop between listening and speaking.
So when we boil it all down, what does this all mean? What's the core message here?
I think the core message, the real why behind all these techniques, is that active listening is ultimately about much more than just language proficiency. It's fundamentally a practice in connection, in empathy, and in demonstrating professional and personal respect.
Right.
By dedicating your full cognitive resources, your genuine attention, to truly understanding the speaker, their ideas, their feelings, their perspective, you're not only turbocharging your own language skills, you're also showing profound respect for them as a person and for their communication effort. And that respect is the absolute cornerstone of effective collaboration, negotiation, and relationship building, regardless of the language you're using.
That's a powerful way to frame it. It's about connection, not just correction.
Couldn't agree more. So we strongly encourage you listening now to begin applying these methods, maybe the advanced LARA framework or the LPRR practice technique starting today, even in small ways. Start small with focused practice sessions. Deliberately challenge your listening stamina over time. Make a conscious effort to reflect back what you hear in conversations to check your understanding. And remember, listening is primarily a receptive skill. It builds gradually, like strength training for the brain. So please, be patient and be strategic with yourself throughout this improvement process. It takes time.
Absolutely. Patience is key. And maybe a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. Active listening isn't just a set of techniques. It's fundamentally a choice you make about your mindset and communication. It's about consciously choosing curiosity over defensiveness or judgment. It's about choosing connection over interruption or just waiting for your turn to speak. Every single minute you spend engaged and focused, mindful listening, you are actively training your brain. You're training it to stop laboring over word-for-word translation and to start naturally processing complex thought directly in English. And that is what moves you steadily closer to true, confident fluency. So go out there and listen. Listen to understand, listen to connect, and listen to grow. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it useful. Please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice podcast topic name is Common English Listening Traps to Avoid. If you're learning English, you've definitely been there. That moment a native speaker starts talking and suddenly what you learned in class just dissolves. It turns into this fast, kind of intimidating blur of sound. It's super frustrating, right? And we often think, oh, I just don't have enough words, or maybe my brain isn't fast enough. But today, we're going to challenge that idea a bit. We've looked through quite a bit of research, educational stuff, and we found the real issues are often these like specific, common, and actually avoidable problems. We're calling them listening traps. That's exactly right. That's the heart of this deep dive. These traps, they aren't really about how smart you are or how hard you're trying. They're more like sneaky habits, maybe linguistic blind spots that just get in the way of understanding everything. So our mission here is to give you a really solid roadmap. We want to help you spot these 15 common traps, because once you recognize them, you can start actively avoiding them. And that's how you shift, from that frustrating, passive kind of hearing to really fluid, strategy-based, active comprehension. It's all about building up your cognitive resilience against these hurdles that English just naturally throws at non-native speakers.
Okay, let's dig into that term listening trap a bit more then. What exactly do we mean by a trap? Is it like your brain takes a shortcut, but it's the wrong one, maybe assuming you heard a word correctly just based on the sound? Or that classic thing of trying to translate every single word back into your first language in real time? Yeah, you've hit on some key ones already. These traps are really tied into the specific way English works. As a learner, you're constantly navigating these, linguistic landmines, you could say. Take homophones, for instance. English has tons of words that sound identical, but have totally different spellings and meanings. Think pair and pair, or two and two. If your ear isn't quite tuned in, or if you're processing a bit slowly, your brain might just grab the most common word it knows that fits that sound, even if the context points elsewhere. And that leads straight to misunderstandings.
Right, like hearing by the water when someone actually said by the water. Very different meaning.
Precisely. And it's not just single words. The speed itself is a huge factor.
Oh, definitely.
Because native speakers rely heavily on connected speech. We don't pronounce every single word clearly and separately, like in a textbook recording. Sounds get blended, letters get dropped, phrases get smushed together. So what are you going to do becomes like, what you going to do? If you're listening for those neat word boundaries you learned, this rapid blended flow can just sound like, well, noise. It's hard to pick out the words.
And then you layer idiomatic expressions on top of that.
Exactly. Things like kick the bucket or spill the beans. A native speaker gets the meaning instantly. It's cultural shorthand. But if you try a word-for-word translation, it made zero sense. Huge potential for just completely missing the point or the feeling of what's being said.
And these aren't just like small academic points. Getting caught in these traps can have real-world consequences, can't it? You know, mishearing instructions for a job or getting travel directions wrong because you assumed one word or couldn't unpack that fast connected speech. We actually came across a comment from a learner online who talked about this exact thing, assuming what you heard without checking. They called it a pernicious mistake. Pernicious. Because it's an error you often don't even realize you've made until much later when things go wrong.
That's a great description. And when you look at the underlying reason for why these traps work, it often boils down to cognitive overload. See, a native speaker mostly hears sounds and automatically connects them to meaning. It's largely effortless. But if you're learning, your brain is doing multiple complex tasks all at once. You're trying to segment that connected speech into words, maybe translate some, access the context, figure out the grammar, store the meaning, all while the speaker is already on to the next sentence. It's an intense workout for your working memory. And because you don't have that automatic processing that natives do, you get mentally tired much faster. And when your brain is tired, that's when it starts taking those risky shortcuts. That's when you fall into the trap.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It really frames why strategies are so important. It's not about being bad at listening, it's about managing that cognitive load. So it's really empowering, I think, for learners to know these struggles aren't unique to them, they're actually well-documented cognitive hurdles. What does the science actually tell us about why non-native speakers find listening in English so uniquely tough?
Right. The research points to several key areas. First, there are the linguistic and perceptual challenges. Yes, vocabulary matters, of course. But often, a deeper issue is actually weak sound perception. Studies show that the phonetic differences between your native language, your L1, and English can mean your brain literally doesn't register certain subtle sound distinctions accurately. For example, if your language doesn't distinguish between, say, the ship paya sound and the sheep ice sound in the same way English does, hearing that difference consistently can be really hard. So you have to rely much more heavily on context to guess the right word.
So your brain isn't even necessarily getting the right sound information to begin with.
Sometimes, yeah. Or it's getting it, but requires way more effort to process it correctly. And that links to the second point, the high cost of cognitive load. This isn't just a feeling, it's measurable. Research shows non-native listeners use significantly more mental energy, what they call higher listening effort, to process the same sentence compared to native speakers. Think of it like this. If a native uses, say, 2 units of brain power for a sentence, a non-native might need 8 units. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, 4 times the effort.
Exactly. So when the speech is fast or the topic is complicated, you just run out of mental resources much quicker. This is why you might suddenly realize you've forgotten what was said just a few seconds ago. Your brain had to dump that information to focus on decoding the incoming sounds.
And it feels like traditional language classes don't always prepare you for this reality, right? That leads to what the studies called strategic deficits.
That's a really insightful point. A lot of formal education, especially maybe for younger learners, tends to focus on very structured grammar textbook dialogues, stuff that doesn't sound much like real spontaneous conversation. This lack of exposure to authentic speech means learners often haven't developed crucial listening strategies. They haven't been explicitly taught how to use context effectively to infer meaning, to make educated guesses when they hit an unknown word. And that skill strategic inference is absolutely vital for handling those inevitable vocabulary gaps in real time. Sometimes teaching how to guess intelligently is more useful than trying to pre-teach every single word.
That makes sense. And another huge barrier, one we can't ignore, is the sheer variety of accents and speed. It often feels like just when you get comfortable with one type of English, you hear someone with a completely different accent and you're lost again.
Oh, absolutely. And science backs up that feeling. Fast speech is obviously tough, but the sheer range of accents is a major hurdle. We're talking regional UK accents, US accents, Australian, Irish, but also the many different non-native English accents spoken around the world. Research actually highlights that even very advanced non-native speakers can find speech from other non-native speakers, if the accent is unfamiliar, particularly difficult to understand.
Really? Why is that?
Part of the explanation lies in a concept called perceptual narrowing.
Perceptual narrowing. Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Imagine your brain like a radio tuner when you're a baby. It naturally dials into the specific sound frequencies of your native language very precisely. And crucially, it learns to filter out sound distinctions that aren't important in your language. So, for example, if your native language doesn't make a meaningful difference between the R and L sounds, your brain basically learns, okay, that difference isn't important, filter it out.
Ah, I see.
Then later in life, when you try to learn English where R and L are very distinct and change word meanings like right versus light, your brain is already kind of pre-programmed to ignore or downplay that very distinction you now need to hear clearly. The neural pathways for easily processing those foreign sounds have narrowed. It makes picking up new accents, especially those with unfamiliar sound patterns, genuinely more difficult. It takes conscious effort to retrain the brain.
That's fascinating. So just listening more isn't always enough. You need specific strategies to kind of force your brain to pay attention to those sounds again.
You got it. And that ties into the final scientific hurdle, error detection. Because non-native listeners are operating under such high cognitive load, processing everything a bit slower, research shows they often fail to notice errors in the speaker's own speech. Maybe the speaker misspoke or said something factually inconsistent. A native listener might catch it instantly. But the non-native listener is often so focused on just grasping the basic meaning and keeping up that these inconsistencies just fly under the radar. And that's a trap in itself, because you might end up misunderstanding the intended message or accepting flawed information simply because your processing capacity was maxed out.
Okay, so the science is pretty clear. These struggles are common, they're rooted in cognitive processes, and they're influenced by our linguistic background. But the really good news here is that because we understand the why, we can develop targeted strategies. Every trap we're about to discuss has specific techniques to counter these core difficulties. These hurdles are definitely surmountable. Right, let's get practical then. We've grouped the 15 most common traps we identified into 3 main categories. First up, traps related to sound and context.
Okay, let's start with probably the most fundamental, but also one of the sneakiest. Trap 1. Assuming what you heard without verifying. This is where those homophones and maybe slightly misheard sounds really bite you. Because your processing might be a bit slower, your brain looks for the easy way out. It jumps to the first word that sounds kind of right, the most frequent word maybe, instead of waiting a split second longer for the context to confirm it.
And the risk is huge. Like we said, with buy versus buy, you could think someone said, "Can you write this down?" when they actually said, "Turn right at the town." Completely changes everything.
So what are the practical avoidance tips here? The sources mentioned using context clues, obviously. If they're talking about directions, the sound rate is almost certainly right, not right.
Absolutely, context is king. But there's another technique, kind of an active mental habit. We call it the mental echo. The moment you hear a word or short phrase that feels a bit ambiguous or uncertain, immediately replay it in your head, just a quick internal echo. This forces a tiny pause using your short-term auditory memory. It just slows things down enough for your brain to double-check that sound against the topic. So if you echo, "I saw the pear," but the conversation is about fruit, you instantly know, wait, that can't be right, it must have been pear. It flags uncertainty.
I like that, a little internal replay button. Okay, so trap 1 is about mishearing or assuming sounds. What about when you do hear the word correctly, but it's completely new to you? Ah, yes, that leads straight into trap 2, focusing too much on unknown words. This is a classic cognitive overload scenario. You're listening along, understanding fine, then bam, you hit a word you've never heard before, maybe something complex like ephemeral. Your brain just freezes on that word.
Yeah.
You start mentally scrambling, trying to figure it out, maybe translate it. While you're doing that, you completely miss the next sentence, maybe even 2 sentences. The core message sails right past you.
Right, you get stuck and the conversation moves on without you. So the avoidance has to be quick, right? Like making a fast decision.
Exactly. We call it the skip and skim technique. You have to make a rapid judgment call. Is this word absolutely essential to understanding the main point right now? Often it's not. Maybe it's just a descriptive adjective, or maybe the speaker even explains it immediately after, like his comments were quite inflammatory, really designed to provoke anger. You hear inflammatory, you don't know it, but the explanation gives you the gist, provoking anger. So you mentally skip the unknown word itself. Skim the context for clues or definitions, and keep your focus moving with the main idea. Don't let one word derail the whole train.
Okay, skip and skim. Got it. Now, moving beyond individual words, what about the overall delivery?
That brings us to trap 3, ignoring tone and intonation. It's all about prosody, the rhythm, the stress, the pitch, changes in speech. Non-native listeners, especially early on, often focus purely on the dictionary meaning of words, but they miss the huge amount of meaning, emotion, sarcasm, doubt, excitement that's carried only by the tone of voice.
Oh yeah, sarcasm is a big one. Someone says, "Oh, great job," but they say it really flatly, maybe with a falling tone at the end.
And they mean the exact opposite. They mean it was a terrible job. If you only process the words "great job," you've completely misunderstood the message. It's a huge social and comprehension trap.
So how do you train your ear for this? It seems quite subtle.
It takes conscious practice.
Yeah.
One idea is using a tone tag system when you're reviewing audio with a transcript. When you listen back, actively pay attention to the speaker's pitch and rhythm. Make little notes in the margin, sarcastic, excited, sounding doubtful. Pay special attention to things like rising tones, often questions, or uncertainty versus falling tones, which in English can signal finality, confidence, or sometimes irony. It trains your brain to connect those pitch patterns with their typical meanings.
Tone tagging. Okay. Now, this next one feels like the classic piece of advice for language learners.
You must mean trap 4, translating in your head.
Exactly, that constant mental translation from English back to your native language.
Yeah, it's probably the single biggest contributor to that feeling of cognitive overload and slow processing we talked about. Every single time you hear an English word, your brain runs this little detour. English sound. Find L1 equivalent. Understand L1, meaning connect back to English context. It's like building a temporary, unnecessary bridge for every single word. It dramatically slows you down, makes real-time conversation almost impossible, and actually prevents you from building those direct connections between English words and their meanings.
So the goal is really to think in English, not just translate from English. How do you force that switch?
It takes deliberate effort during practice. The core strategy is implementing a strict English-only mental rule when you're listening. Fight the urge to translate. Instead, train yourself to visualize concepts directly from the English. When you hear an idiom like, "It's raining cats and dogs," don't try to find the equivalent idiom in your language. Just picture really heavy rain.
Yeah.
Or break a leg, don't translate it literally or find your L1 good luck phrase. Picture a performer on stage being wish well. This forces your brain to build those direct English to concept links, bypassing the L1 detour.
Visualization, not translation. Makes sense. Okay, and the last trap in the sound context group takes us back to variety.
Right, trap 5. Not accounting for accents. This is about the danger of assuming all English sounds the same, or maybe only practicing with one standard accent, like Standard American or RP British. The reality is English is spoken with a huge range of accents, regional ones within countries, like a Texan accent versus a New York accent, or a Scottish versus a London accent, and then all the different non-native accents globally. Studies clearly show this diversity is a major hurdle.
So if you only ever listen to BBC News, you might be completely lost talking to someone from Australia or India or Ireland.
Precisely. The avoidance strategy here is straightforward, but requires commitment. Expose yourself to variety. Deliberately seek out listening materials featuring different accents. Maybe have an accent day each week where you focus on a specific accent, listen to an Australian podcast, watch a movie with Scottish actors, find interviews with speakers from South Africa or Singapore, and as you listen, consciously try to notice the specific differences. How do they pronounce certain vowels? Do they drop R sounds? Are there common regional words or phrases like y'all in the southern U.S.? Actively tuning into these variations builds your flexibility.
Okay, accent day. I like that. So those are the traps rooted in sound and context. Now let's shift to traps related to our listening strategy and focus.
Right. And the first one here is a bit counterintuitive, maybe. Trap 6, over-reliance on subtitles.
Counterintuitive because subtitles feel so helpful, especially at the beginning.
They absolutely are helpful initially. They provide crucial support. But the trap is becoming dependent on them. If you always have subtitles on, your brain gets lazy about auditory processing. It knows it can just read the text, so it doesn't put in the hard work of decoding the sounds. It actually hinders the development of your pure listening skills in the long run. You're practicing reading, not listening.
So how do you wean yourself off them?
You need to introduce strategic difficulty. One fun way is the subtitle toggle game. Watch a short video clip with subtitles first to grasp the content. Then, immediately re-watch the same clip without subtitles, forcing your ears to do the work, connecting the sounds you now know should be there. A more advanced version. Try transcribing the audio first. Listen to a segment, pause, and write down exactly what you think you heard. Then turn on the subtitles or check the transcript to see how accurate you were. It really highlights where your sound perception needs work.
Okay, the subtitle toggle. That sounds like a good challenge. What's next?
Trap 7. Ignoring connected speech. We touched on this earlier with what you're going to do, but it goes deeper than just common contractions. It's about failing to anticipate or recognize all the subtle ways sounds merge, link, and change rhythm in natural, fast speech. Like, how did you eat yet? Can sound like one smooth unit. Jeet. The word boundaries just seem to disappear.
Yeah, that can sound like a completely different language sometimes. How do you practice hearing those connections?
You need to train your ear for that specific flow. Shadowing is great, where you listen and repeat immediately after the speaker, trying to mimic their rhythm and linking. But for more targeted practice, use specific link and blend drills. Focus on common sound mergers. Practice saying did you versus Jew or jeet. Practice how the to sound often changes or disappears between words, like in get up, sounding like get up. Or focus on how small functional words like or a often reduce to just a quick schwa sound to cup of tea. Drilling these specific links makes you better at predicting and hearing them in real conversation.
Link and blend drills. Okay. Now, this next one seems obvious, but maybe its impact is underestimated. Trap 8. Distractions and lack of focus.
It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's incredibly potent, especially for language learners. Remember that high cognitive load we talked about? Your brain is already working overtime. If you try to listen while also scrolling through your phone, or if your mind is wandering because you're stressed or tired, or even if there's just background noise, that extra distraction dramatically increases the cognitive effort required. Comprehension just falls apart.
So finding a quiet space and dedicated time is step 1. But what about internal distractions, when your mind just drifts off?
Yes, the wandering mind. We all experience that. You need an active technique to pull your attention back quickly. Try the focus anchor trick. The second you realize your focus has drifted, mentally grab onto the very last word or short phrase you consciously registered hearing. Just repeat that word or phrase silently in your head once. It sounds tiny, but that simple act works like an anchor. It interrupts the daydreaming and instantly pulls your attention back to the sound stream, hopefully before you've missed too much.
A mental anchor. I like that. Okay, but what if you are focused, but the topic itself is really unfamiliar? You don't have much background knowledge.
That's trap 9. Not using prior knowledge. Schema. Your schema is basically all the background information, vocabulary, and concepts you already have stored in your brain about a particular topic. If you start listening to something on, say, quantum physics, and you have zero background knowledge, your brain has nothing to connect the new information to. Every term is new. Every concept is alien. It makes understanding and inferring meaning incredibly difficult. You're processing in a vacuum.
So you need to kind of warm up your brain for the topic beforehand.
Exactly. You need to intentionally activate your existing schema. We suggest the schema activation minute. Before you hit play on that audio or video, take literally 60 seconds. Actively brainstorm. What do I already know about this topic? What related words come to mind? If the topic is climate change, think emissions, renewable energy, global warming, sea levels. Just bringing those related concepts to the front of your mind primes your brain. It helps you anticipate vocabulary and makes it much easier to understand context and make educated guesses when you encounter new information.
Schema activation. Good tip. Okay, next is an emotional one. Trap 10. Fear of making mistakes.
Yes, this is huge. The anxiety of not understanding or worrying about misunderstanding actually increases your cognitive load. It makes you hesitate. You hear a word you're only 70% sure about. Instead of moving on, you pause mentally, dwelling on that uncertainty for maybe 2 or 3 crucial seconds. In that time, the speaker had moved on, and you've missed the next part of the message. The fear itself causes you to fall behind.
So the advice is to just guess and move on. We call it the guess and go rule. But isn't that risky? What if you guess wrong constantly? Won't that reinforce errors?
That's a really important clarification. Guess and go isn't about being reckless or not caring about accuracy. It's about prioritizing flow and momentum, overachieving 100% certainty on every single word in real time. The guardrail, as you put it, is twofold. First, you make an educated guess based on context, not a wild stab in the dark. Second, you accept that some guesses will be wrong, and that's okay, that's part of learning. The key is to make the quick inference, assign it a mental probability, like, okay, 60% sure it means this, and immediately refocus on the ongoing speech. If later, maybe during review, you realize you were wrong, fantastic. That's a concrete learning opportunity. But in the moment, hesitation is more damaging than an occasional wrong guess. Keep the conversation moving in your head.
Okay, accept imperfect understanding in the moment to maintain the overall flow. That makes sense. And the last one in the strategy section.
Trap 11. Ignoring nonverbal cues. This applies mainly when you can actually see the speaker, like in a video call, a presentation, or face-to-face conversation. Things like facial expressions, hand gestures, body posture. These provide a huge amount of extra information that supports or clarifies the verbal message. But learners, often hyper-focused on just decoding the sounds, can completely miss these powerful visual aids.
Right, like someone might say something a bit ambiguous, but their facial expression makes the meaning crystal clear.
Absolutely. Or a gesture might illustrate exactly what they mean. To avoid this trap, make a point of practicing with visual media videos, movies, interviews, and use a cue note system during your practice or review. Consciously observe the speaker's body language. Make notes. Speaker smiled here confirms positive feeling, or shrugged shoulders indicates uncertainty about that point. Actively linking the visual cue to the verbal message reinforces comprehension, especially when the audio alone might be tricky.
Okay, paying attention to the whole picture, not just the sound. Got it. That covers the strategy and focus traps. Now for the final group, traps related to the material we use and our practice habits.
Yes, these are more foundational. And kicking us off is Trap 12. Poor vocabulary base. We keep coming back to cognitive load, and this is a root cause. If you simply don't know enough of the words being used, your brain is constantly hitting roadblocks. Every unknown word requires effort to guess or skip, draining those mental resources we talked about. If the vocabulary gap is too big, listening comprehension just becomes overwhelmingly difficult and frustrating.
So building vocabulary is fundamental. What's the strategic approach here?
It needs to be systematic. One great habit is the vocab preview. Before you listen to something on a specific topic, spend a few minutes pre-learning or reviewing key vocabulary related to that theme. If you're listening to a piece about finance, look up words like investment, stock market, interest rates beforehand. Beyond that, have a consistent daily focus on learning high-frequency words, the most common words used in English. There are lists available, like the academic word list. Knowing the most common 2,000, 3,000 words really well gives you a massive advantage because it allows you to understand the core structure and infer the meaning of less common words much more easily.
Vocab preview and focusing on high-frequency words. Good foundation. That's Trap 13.
Trap 13. Not practicing active listening. This is about the difference between just having English audio playing in the background versus truly engaging with it mentally. Passive hearing, like having the radio on while you're cooking, doesn't really build the skills you need. Your brain isn't actively working to understand, predict, and summarize. It's not developing those strategic muscles.
So active listening means what exactly? Thinking along with the speaker.
Yes, essentially. It means you're mentally involved. You should be trying to paraphrase what the speaker is saying in your own mind, maybe predicting what they might say next based on the context. A really effective technique to force active listening is the stop and summarize method. When you're listening to a longer piece, like a lecture or a story, pause the audio every few minutes. Then try to actually say out loud or quickly jot down the main points you just heard. If you can't summarize it, it's a clear sign your brain slipped into passive mode. It forces you to stay engaged and check your comprehension continuously.
Stop and summarize. Okay, that sounds like hard work, but probably very effective. Now, related to practice material, Trap 14, overloading with difficult material.
Ah, yes, the ambition trap. It's so tempting to want to jump straight into watching complex movies or listening to native-level news broadcasts. But if the material is way above your current comprehension level too fast, too much complex vocabulary, unfamiliar accents, it just leads to constant frustration. You understand maybe 20%, feel overwhelmed, get discouraged, and often just give up. It's counterproductive.
So finding the right level is key. How do you manage that progression?
You need to be honest about your current level and be patient. Start with graded listening materials, resources specifically designed for learners at different levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced. Stick with material where you can comfortably understand, say, 80–90% of the content. Then implement gradual level up challenges. Once you feel really confident at your current level, then try something slightly more difficult. Maybe listen to something slightly faster or on a slightly more complex topic. This step-by-step progression builds confidence and ensures you solidify the skills at one level before tackling the next. It makes the whole process sustainable and much less frustrating.
Gradual level ups. Smart. And finally, the last trap.
Trap 15. Neglecting repetition. Just listening to a challenging piece of audio once is rarely enough, especially if you're trying to improve your perception of specific sounds, accents, or connected speech patterns. Your brain needs repeated exposure to really internalize new sounds, vocabulary, and structures, and to make those recognition processes more automatic. A single listen often isn't enough to catch all the nuances or move information into long-term memory.
So listening again and again is important.
Absolutely, especially for difficult sections. Use the loop listen technique. If there's a particular sentence or a minute of audio that you really struggled with, maybe because of the speed or a tricky phrase, isolate that segment. Loop it. Play it over and over again, maybe 5-10 times. Listen closely until the sounds become clearer, the connections make sense, and you feel you've really got it. And combine this with spaced repetition for review. Don't just listen once and forget. Revisit challenging audio recordings after a day, then after a week, then after a month. This repeated exposure over time is crucial for solidifying learning and building that automatic recognition.
Loop listen and spaced repetition. Okay, that rounds out the 15 traps and their avoidance strategies. That's a lot to take in, but incredibly useful. Now, we've talked about strategies, but learners also need good materials to practice with. What are some resources that actually help people implement these techniques?
Great question. You definitely need the right tools. For that structured practice, especially tackling cognitive load and verifying understanding, the British Council Learn English website is really excellent. They have tons of listening activities, clearly organized by level, often themed, which helps with Trap 9 schema activation, and crucially, they almost always provide full transcripts. That's essential for checking your understanding and doing things like the mental echo or tone tagging.
Okay, British Council. Good for structured learning. What about more conversational practice?
For that, Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab is a classic and still very valuable resource. It focuses heavily on dialogues and conversations. The key benefit there is that most listening exercises come with comprehension quizzes right after. This directly fights Trap 1, assuming you understood, because it forces you to immediately check if you actually grasp the key details.
Instant feedback. Nice. And you mentioned visual cues earlier for Trap 11.
Yes. For tackling the trap of ignoring nonverbal cues, you obviously need video. Resources recommended by places like the Fluency Educator blog, which often emphasize using authentic video content with integrated learning tools, are perfect. Watching real people speak, seeing their expressions, their gestures while you listen, provides that vital extra layer of context. It helps you practice using those cue notes and connect the visual information with the audio.
So videos are key for that. And I guess generally just using a wide variety of sources is important, right? Podcasts, YouTube channels, like maybe English Class 101 or similar ones, news sites, maybe resources like Ella, which has thousands of short interviews with speakers from all over the world.
Absolutely. The goal is diversity. Use different platforms, listen to different accents, different speeds, different topics. Don't let yourself get stuck in a rut with just one type of material. Constantly challenge yourself across the board to build resilience against all 15 traps.
Okay, great resources. Now, theory and strategies are one thing, but it's always motivating to hear about real people who've actually overcome these hurdles. Do we have examples of these strategies working in practice?
We do, drawn from the materials we looked at. These stories really show the transformation that's possible. For instance, take accent confusion trap 5. There was an example of a learner who really struggled with understanding accents very different from their own. Instead of just getting frustrated, they consciously focused on using context trap 9 strategy, schema activation, to make intelligent guesses about meaning, even when the sounds were unclear. This active guessing process not only improved their comprehension over time, but also massively boosted their confidence. And that confidence directly helped them perform better in stressful situations, like job interviews where they encountered unfamiliar speakers.
Wow, so strategy directly led to real-world success. What about something like sarcasm, that intonation trap?
Yes, trap 3, ignoring intonation. There was a case of a quite advanced student who still felt they were missing subtle cues, especially sarcasm or irony, in professional discussions. They started deliberately using the tone tag system during their listening practice, actively noting down the speaker's tone and its likely meaning alongside the words. By consciously training their ear to map pitch and rhythm to intention, they became much better at picking up those nuances. They moved from feeling slightly outside the conversation to being able to engage confidently and appropriately, even in quite complex debates.
That's a huge difference in fluency, and you mentioned verification earlier.
Right, the power of verification against trap one. Assuming what you heard. We saw the story of a Russian learner who described feeling constantly frustrated, almost misled by mishearing words. Their solution was simple but powerful. They made a strict habit of always checking a transcript after listening, specifically looking for words they felt uncertain about. This commitment to verification transformed their experience. Instead of just letting potential errors slide, they were actively identifying and correcting them. It shifted their feeling from constant frustration and guesswork to actual enjoyment and measurable progress.
Taking control by checking makes sense. Any others?
One more relating to concentration traps, trap 8. We know focus is hard, especially in high-pressure situations like important meetings. There were accounts of students who specifically practiced the focus anchor technique, that trick of mentally repeating the last heard word in low-stakes practice sessions. They found that by mastering this simple technique when the pressure was off, they could then deploy it automatically when they were in those important meetings. It gave them a tool to instantly pull their attention back when their minds started to wander, allowing them to stay engaged and participate much more confidently.
Fantastic. Those examples really bring it home. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are practical tools that genuinely help people improve. So wrapping this up, the core message here really seems to be this. If you're struggling with English listening, it's likely not just about your overall level. It's probably about specific, identifiable hurdles, these 15 traps we've discussed. But the great news is, for each trap, there's a counter strategy. From using the mental echo for unclear sounds, to skip and skim for unknown words, to embracing accent day using the subtitle toggle, practicing active listening, and remembering loop listens, just knowing these pitfalls exist is the first huge step towards overcoming them and really transforming your listening from passive frustration into active, confident comprehension.
Absolutely, and that transformation has to start somewhere concrete. So here's a final thought, maybe a challenge for you, the listener. Take a moment this week to consciously think about your own listening experiences. Which of these 15 traps trips you up most often? Don't try to tackle all 15 at once, that's overwhelming. Just pick one. Maybe it's translating in your head, maybe it's getting lost in connected speech, maybe it's the fear of making mistakes. Pick one trap, identify its specific avoidance strategy from our discussion, and commit to actively practicing just that one strategy this week. Start small, but start now. See what difference it makes.
Great challenge. Start small, focus, and build from there. If you found this deep dive helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more insights into boosting your English skills. Happy listening.